And I think this officially has us as live right now. Yep.
If you can hear background noise, please tell me.
I don't think I can. Okay. You ready?
Great. I'm ready.
Let's go over this debate.
Proposition.
Well, should we do a little bit of an
format.
introduction?
Sure. How do you want to go about it?
I'm Adam Dohl. That's Corinth. We're reviewing the Andrew Wilson Apostate Prophet debate. We're both fans of Andrew. We're biased. I'm going to try to be unbiased, but I think Apostate Prophet did poorly.
I also think that I'm going to try and be as like charitable to Apostate Prophet throughout this as like humanly possible. Just because to counteract the biases and see like if it's even possible to reconcile, because I just think it's entirely non sequitur.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. We'll probably be pausing like periodically throughout just to...
And then we'll get started. So, for the official debate,
our goal is under
proposition
6 hours.
Should Christians, in particular,
I think we can
support
get through this
Zionism?
like 2
We'll
or
have
3.
12-minute
It's like an hour-long
opening statements with
debate.
Apostate Prophet going first. This will be followed by 5-minute rebuttals and then 15 minutes of crossfire between the speakers. Following this, we'll have 35 minutes of audience Q&A and then 3-minute closings.
You see somebody
from
back
each
there?
Speaker.
See
With that, we're going to jump right into it. Thanks very much. AP, the floor is all yours for your openings.
No one.
Pen, James.
They might be like short.
Oh.
No pens, James. Not a single pen.
Could be like a short person maybe.
A pen right behind the
Well,
top.
maybe somebody is short.
AP.
Terrible beginning.
We'll kick it over to AP. The floor is all yours. Look at the timer set.
Thank you so much, James. Thanks to Uncensored America, and thanks to Andrew for organizing this. Andrew is a newcomer to debates. Many people don't know him. He might be a little bit nervous today. Before I start, I want to point out that there is a QR code over there. It might also appear on the screen. So I'm not going to go with a presentation, but I have a one-page landing site there where everyone can follow the evidence and everything that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to argue for the position that Christians should absolutely support Zionism. In order to have a proper debate about this topic, we need to establish first what Zionism is. Over the last years, lots of people have began talking about Zionism, often in very wrong ways. They have given wrong descriptions, especially when Christianity comes into the equation. Lots of people misunderstand what Zionism is about. They think that it is about some end-time prophecy, often influenced by certain Protestant teachings, but it might come as a surprise to many people. But when I say Zionism, we are simply talking about the establishment and the protection of a land, a country, a state where Jews can live freely, a Jewish state in what is now known as Israel. At some point in history, this was
Wait, hold on. Can you pause that? So, hold on. I actually didn't catch this. He just described America. Go back, listen to it again, try to think. Does that definition not fit America currently?
Israel, a state where Jews can live freely, a Jewish state in what is now known as Israel.
I think the first part falls under it.
Well, I suppose Jewish state would be the disqualifier if the state has to be Jewish. But other than that, it means every other qualifier.
I think there are like 2 separate definitions within this one, right? The establishment of a land country that Jews live freely, as well as a Jewish state now known as Israel. I think he just gave 2 separate conditions, and if we listen to it as like,
are you streaming through OBS?
Yeah, I am.
Sorry, I don't think I can hear you.
Oh shit! Yeah, sorry. I forgot to push to talk on. I'm probably gonna turn that off while we do this. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, I think he gives like 2 different definitions within this. One of them is like the establishment of a land country that Jews live freely, which would be like one that would fit like America or basically any Western country. And then there's a secondary condition of like a Jewish state now known as Israel. I think those are just like two separate definitions of like what the state could look like. Maybe if you like conjoin them, but that just still gets you like Israel itself. Israel just has to also have those conditions of being like a Jewish state.
Well, my background is like, for people who don't know me, I'm like self-taught in political theory. I'm like a political theory nerd who just basically researches whatever I want. But the use of the term free is interesting. Freedom has like 3 or 4 different definitions in like political philosophy. Whatever. Like the definition is, and this is a criticism I've had, it's overbroad. It's either overbroad or a lie. So if Zionism is support of any given state, then I could propose a state that's doing morally abhorrent things, like actually slaughtering Arabs. Like, I'm not saying they're doing that now, but you could say Zionism could be support of that, and then say, okay, if it's any state, then AP, I presume, doesn't support that, so then AP wouldn't be a Zionist. Or it's support of any state, if you support any particular, then you're a Zionist. Okay, then I could say I'm a Zionist because, like, Stephen Wolfe has like Christian nationalism, which is the case for Christian nationalism, where he lies out like a theory of how you could do a Christian nationalist state. I could say I support that system, which he lies out, which is an explicitly Christian state, but it's ran entirely by ethnic Jews, in which case I'd be a Zionist by this definition. It's either overbroad or can fit anything. Like overbroad is in nobody's a Zionist, or overbroad is in everybody's a Zionist.
It might be the case that I don't even know if I want to say he's doing like a uniquely self-sovereign in the case that, like, Jews themselves are entirely leading the country, but that
I'm assuming, given what he says later, that he's specifically talking about ethnic Jews. So you could say any system of government, literally any system of government that's ran by Jews that adheres to one of the multiple definitions of freedom for the rest of the Jews.
I think it might be more valuable to just like completely separate these two definitions personally. Just because he's mostly just defends current Israel. Those are like all of his arguments are based entirely on like the state now known as Israel. So it seems
yes, yeah.
So you ready to keep going?
That's true. Yep. Yeah. Sorry.
At some point in history, this was known as Palestine, or Palestina, named by the Romans in order to suppress Jewish identity. Today, the Arabs living in the region have adopted, or rather appropriated, this name for themselves. But that's all it is. Zionism simply stands for establishing and protecting a land, a state for the Jewish people. I want to make one thing very clear, which is that I am not a Christian Zionist. I'm not a religious Zionist. I am a Christian today who also happens to support Zionism, because I care about the continued...
I think this is a weird little note, but the explicit prompt that got laid out was, should Christians in particular support Zionism? And by saying, like, I'm not a Christian Zionist, this seems to be a little bit undermining to the prompt itself.
I think what he's saying is that he doesn't follow a specific theological statement of Christian Zionism, which would be found in dispensationalism specifically.
Okay.
I think that's what he's trying to say. Obviously, he is a Zionist for religious reasons, but he's not a Zionist for those religious reasons.
Okay.
Existence of the Jewish people in the land. That's what I support. Being an anti-Zionist would by definition be to be against the existence of this state, to be against the existence of a state for Jews, and would also conclude in the annihilation, the extermination, the destruction of the Jewish people in the land. And this is not just a fallacy, this is not propaganda, this is the truth. Destroying such a state would immediately, very quickly, lead to the destruction of the Jewish people living there. We don't have to speculate very much about
There's an interesting niche here that he's saying lacking support for this thing would then imply that it gets destroyed, or that like the goal of what you're doing for will come about. So like
Yeah.
that seems to be something that he's making a little bit of a leap on. We can be overly charitable and just say like, in the case of Zionism and anti-Zionism, there's just an assumption that like the will of it's going to succeed, maybe.
Well, I would just reject what he's saying here. I mean, I don't. That this is like saying, if you're like an anti-communist in like the 1980s, that you are supporting the death of all Russians. It seems like he's making some sort of a pragmatic argument, but he denies that he's doing this later on.
I guess he specifically says within the area. So it might be the case if like you just agree Hamas will be successful in annihilating the Jews if like they lack Christian support, which that leap there seems to be a little bit weird to me. I don't get where he's going from. If we don't support this thing, then they will die. Unless we just like assume the support would be what succeeds there, which might be worthwhile in just granting for like sake of argument to see, hey, this is the implication of what your goal is. Or if your goal is achieved, it will be like leading to this.
Israel is currently at war with Hamas. Hamas stands for Islamic Resistance Movement, a very, very nice trick by the Islamists to describe themselves as a resistance. From the very beginning, Hamas made their mission very, very clear: to destroy Israel and to eradicate the Jewish people. This is not just Israeli propaganda. It is in Hamas's own declaration, rooted in Islamic prophecy. In the Hamas Charter of 1988, you can read very clearly in Article 7 that it says, "The hour will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, and the rocks and trees will say, 'O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him,' except for the Gargat tree, which is the tree of the Jews." You only get something this sick in Islam, where you have a Jew tree that is evil because it refuses to snitch on the Jews. But the message here is very clear. It is the destruction of the Jewish people. That is literally what Hamas started out with. Hamas doesn't hide this at all. After October 7, their leadership declared that they would happily attack Israel over and over again until Israel is completely destroyed and eradicated. The leadership of Hamas, Fatih Hamad, a leader among the Palestinian Arabs in Gaza, has in 2018 and on multiple occasions explicitly said, word for word, I'm not exaggerating, that within a few years we will fulfill the promise of the eradication, the cleansing of the filth of the Jews from the land of Palestine. He also said that the second goal after that is to establish or re-establish the Islamic Caliphate in Jerusalem. And I will come to that in a minute, in less than a minute.
Can you pause this? No. Just briefly. Now, those statements were made in 2018. I'm telling you, 2020, that messed up everybody's plans. Anyway, that's all.
Well, Hamas is not alone in this. While Gaza is led by Hamas, on the other side, in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority is in charge. The Palestinian Authority marks itself as a secular movement, but being secular in the Muslim world is not like being secular in the West. Being secular there simply means that you establish a political system which is not a theocracy, but which is also not free from Islamic influence. For example, the Palestinian Authority has a Ministry of Religious Affairs, which only 1 week or 2 weeks after the October 7 terrorist attack instructed mosques, and you can find this when you scan the code, instructed mosques on October 20th.
I do wish like we could see the code.
Tell Muslims in the mosques that the time will come when the Muslims will fight and eradicate.
So, you wanted to see what now?
The code. He's referencing the QR code to like see his little PowerPoint presentation with his sources.
Give me a second.
Okay.
I can pull it up. Because that is still up, at least as of his Hold on, I will find it. Just give me 1 second. Maybe.
Mostly because a lot of the framing around being like AP throwing out a ton of sources and Andrew not sourcing, being able to see like exactly what his sources are. And like
he went over some of his so for those of you who don't know, AP as well as David Wood and Inspiring Philosophy did a 6-hour debate review after this, and they reference most of their sources in that debate review. As well as post the link in the description for that QR code. So I'm going to pull it up.
It's posted there. I'll pull up my phone then.
I believe it's in the description, but my YouTube is crappy. Here it is. So, look in AP debate notes. That's the link.
I'm going to pull that up here just so I can say what he's referencing here. Hamas Charter, Goals of Hamas. Hamas leader.
So AP's one of his strengths is he's always really good at like history and stuff like this. So I'm just assuming that everything he's saying here is true. But some of the sources, as you pointed out to me, I think last night, lead to some pretty funny conclusions.
I think we'll go over that at a
regarding,
later point.
Yes, yeah, when we get to that. But
Okay.
it leads to some funny conclusions regarding Christian oppression.
Yeah. You ready to keep going?
Yes.
The Jews. When they, however, speak in English to the world, they make it look like all their problem is just about existing and resisting. That's not the truth. Let's not make any mistakes here. While Israel's ambition from the very beginning was to exist and to coexist with the other side, the other side from the very beginning always aimed to eradicate the Jews. It's no coincidence that one of the earliest leaders of those Palestinian Arabs was the Grand Mufti Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was also a good friend of none other than Hitler, who to him directly promised, in word, we have documents on this, that if the Nazis win the war, they will come down and together annihilate the Jews, the leftover Jews in the region, and the Islamists will then be in charge of all the Arabs in the region. With all of this on our minds, I want to present 3 reasons why we should be supporting Zionism.
I'm just going to pause right here for a second because I think it's really important to point out he hasn't even gotten into his argument yet. That was just trying to set the tone prior to the argument, which is kind of strange to go that far into it for that.
Well, this is what Andrew starts talking about, that this is more or less emotional.
Yeah.
This is him saying bad things happen to Jews. This is so he sets up the false dichotomy to start with, saying you either support this or all the Jews die. This is all of the people who want the Jews to die. Obviously that's a false dichotomy. It calls it out. But
I mean, if we want to be really charitable, like he said anti-Zionist there, not just non-Zionist.
Yeah. He specifically said anti-Zionist. That's true.
It might be the case that like you can just entirely grant an anti-Zionist would want that kind of thing, but it wouldn't. It doesn't seem like that would be inherently harmful because it would just be like you should be a non-Zionist at that point. At least as an argument that could be fallen onto. Okay, I think we should. I'm gonna go point by point for AP, and we'll see exactly where they go with.
Reason number 1 is to prevent a caliphate. This should be a given. Eradicating Jews, as I just pointed out, is not the final goal. According to Hamas, after the Jews are destroyed, the Islamic Caliphate would be established. In a fantasy world where Hamas wins and actually destroys Israel, it wouldn't simply end there. I know some people might not care about Jews, but at least care about the other people in the region, or care about the history. The euphoria would be huge among Muslims. I grew up in an environment where it was talked about again and again that the Muslims will rise up again one day. If Israel were defeated, an Islamic empire would be re-established, and together they would establish brutal Sharia law and begin oppressing all the others in the region as well. And then they would probably align themselves with Britain, which also is very much Islamic today. In history, we can see that over the last 1,400 years, Islam did nothing except conquer and slaughter. Only last century, the Armenian genocide happened. At the same time, the Assyrians and the Greeks were slaughtered. These massacres inspired the Nazis to commit the Holocaust and to slaughter the Polish and Eastern European people. The Islamic conquests were only forcibly stopped by the Christian West. If they awaken again, it would very, very quickly lead to the rising of an Islamic empire. It is in the best interest of Christians and even of Muslims that we prevent this and we wish for stability through Israel. Reason number 2.
Okay, that's his first reason. And am I the only one who thinks that this idea of like, hey, all they did was like slaughter for the past 1,400 years, only the Christian West finally stopped it, doesn't really get us to why they don't have like a caliphate outside of just Israel? Like
yeah. I suppose the obvious question that I would have is why. Okay, so somehow, on AP's view, Israel is preventing a large number of Islamic nations which have borders and incredibly similar beliefs, according to him, from forming into a caliphate. Somehow. Like, he doesn't really get onto how they're preventing it. Like, is it their mere presence? Is like having Jews in the Middle East prevent Muslims from getting together under a single banner? I don't really understand that.
As well as like a lot of these other countries just don't like the Palestinians. So like if they take completely over, they won't even take Palestinian refugees. I don't see why them taking over would make it like, okay, we're gonna merge countries now. This seems to be just like really spurious.
So in the stream that he does after the fact, as well as in the link, he cites a specific talk by one of the leaders of Hamas, Fatih Hamoud, which is 2018, where he straight up says, we're going to kill all the Jews, and then their next goal is in Jerusalem. And he actually says this, like, AP is good at history. If he's saying something historically happened, he's probably right. But the thing is, that's a guy in Hamas. So
yeah,
I'm not a geopolitics guy that much, but I don't think Hamas is a major regional power. They're a terrorist organization located in Gaza. So he's not citing here plans from like Saudi Arabia in like Iraq or in Iran and Egypt. Well, I actually don't know how Muslim Egypt is, but for all of these groups to join up, unless by caliphate, maybe he means something entirely different by caliphate here.
I mean, it's not really contentious that Hamas would want to do this, right? It's either all the other countries around them want nothing to do with Hamas. They wouldn't want to merge with Hamas for this. It's like one side of it wants to do this, but the other sides that aren't impacted by Israel at all, would also need to be motivated, and they're not motivated for this. In fact, they seem to really hate the Palestinians.
The only possible angle I can see of this being true also requires you to be a bit of a conspiracy nut. So bear with me. This is like what I think is the most reasonable way to get what he's talking about, which is Israel existing is getting beneficial treatment from the United States The United States has worked on destabilizing the Middle East for a long time. If Israel is gone, the United States will cease stabilizing the Middle East, which would then lead to all of these nations joining up. Like, that's, he doesn't make this argument, but that's as close as I can get, like, just off the top of my head.
I mean, we can just look at cases like Saudi Arabia blockading Yemen hard and causing like mass starvations. It doesn't seem like Israel's impacting that very much. I don't see where he's coming from, and none of the arguments he provided even like led to it. It was just, hey, historically these people, or this people group was like violent. They were going to war, unlike the remainder of the world. Don't mention the 100-Year War to him or anything like that. Like, the only violent group of the 1200s, the Arabs. Vikings didn't exist, guys. Don't think about it.
Is to protect the Christians. Israel is significantly better for Christians and other minorities, and even for Muslims, than any other alternative that we have in the region. Let's take Christians as an example. Israel is the only country in the Middle East where Christianity is not shrinking, but growing. The only place in the Middle East where Christians are overwhelmingly satisfied and happy, according to themselves. The only place where Christians have full freedoms, according to Open Doors International, which is a Christian organization that tracks oppression of Christians in the world. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Christian population is shrinking. In the West Bank, the Christian population is shrinking. In Gaza, over the last decades, the general population exploded by about 300%. At the same time, the Christians are about to be non-existent. They have shrunk under the number of 1,000. Some people actually come and ridiculously suggest that this might be Israel's fault, but how could that be? That doesn't make any sense. If Israel was at fault, then the entire population would be shrinking, not just the Christian population. Under Israel, Christianity thrives. Under Islamic persecution, Christianity dies. In 2014, the Greek Orthodox Archbishop Alexios in Gaza said that Hamas uses the compound of the ancient church of St. Porphyrius to fire rockets from there at Israel, which would inevitably lead to Israel having to respond. During this current war, the compound of the St. Porphyrius church received damage and a building inside there collapsed. Guess who people blamed that for? Israel. Reason number 3.
Okay. One thing that's really interesting to note here is the only part of that that had like a source to was the Open Doors saying Christians were satisfied. At least in this. He didn't link any of the other data that he referenced, which, again, for like, with the broader context of the debate, the narrative around it that like Andrew was just schizophrenically rambling while AP was listing off sources like a mad lad seems really silly.
Well, when we get to it, Andrew does cite sources. People can complain that the sources weren't precise or exact, but he does in fact cite sources when we get there.
It's more of just like listing off like empirical numbers doesn't count as like citing a source, which seems to like be one major thing. And I guess there is something really funny as well tied to the later evidence that he references, the Open Doors persecution map. I'm going to pull that up now because it's something very important. World Watch List.
Opera GX? Sorry. I'm going to make fun of you for that off the stream.
I don't see Palestine listed in the persecuting country. If they're like getting persecuted in Gaza, that should either like tie back to Israel or it would be listed as like separately in Palestine, in Gaza. Seems like Palestine is one of the better Middle Eastern area cultures as well for this. At least using his own source. But yeah, it's just like Christian population is growing. We can tie this into like if Israel's just bombing the shit out of Gaza and like accepting the Christians into it, you would expect the population to grow and shrink in Gaza without it being with it being Israel's fault. So him just like tacitly saying, no, that's not Israel's fault is like kind of a nothing burger.
Well, the other thing is, so Gaza's under attack from Israel currently. I'm not making a claim that they're not being persecuted. I have no doubt that they are, because Muslims are like that. But if I'm in a country and I'm a Christian and I have like a family and the country is getting bombed to shit, I might want to leave.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that I don't know, maybe like, okay. Can you play that again? I want to see if he actually cites a source for the numbers, because that is obviously very relevant.
Any other alternative that we have in the region, where Christianity is not shrinking but growing. The only place through Israel. Reason number 2 is to protect the Christians. Israel is significantly better for Christians and other minorities, and even for Muslims, than any other alternative that we have in the region. Let's take Christians as an example. Israel is the only country in the Middle East where Christianity is not shrinking but growing. The only place in the Middle East where Christians are overwhelmingly satisfied and happy according to themselves. The only place where Christians have full freedoms according to Open Doors International, which is a Christian organization that tracks oppression of Christians in the world.
Okay,
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Christian population is...
So does Open Doors International, does it make all of those claims or just the persecution claim?
Open Doors is largely about persecution, so I'd be surprised if it had the alternative. But
okay, so
maybe.
This is March 2022 is this particular screenshot. Another positive finding is 84% of Christians say they were satisfied with the living conditions. World Watch research analyst Henrietta Katz commented, Israel is one of the few, if not the only country in the Middle East where the number of Christians has grown over recent years. So yeah, all of those claims are from Open Doors International. The particular source is not the persecution map, but the article, Israel, Christian numbers rise, but population percentage falls, from March 2022. And it's a very short article.
Do you have it, or do you just have the screenshot?
Yep.
Can you link it?
I will link it.
I just want to pull it up to see something.
And this is prior to the war, I think. I don't know. My fucking fucked up.
The percentage of Christians in Israel's population has been falling compared to other faith communities.
So October 7th was 2020. So this is prior to the current war. But also, this is this is particular to Israel. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with
Palestine?
Gaza, the state of Christians in Gaza.
Okay. So it seems like all those, at least all the claims he made there, were backed up. I will fully retract the statement I made about it being surprising. I didn't realize it was all fit into this. That's my bad.
It's shrinking.
Do we want to go any further into the second argument for now, or do we want to leave it for after Andrew's statement?
Well, all I want to note is that the two arguments so far was we should have Israel because they are because their presence in the region prevents a caliphate, and the second argument is they are the most protecting of Christians of any nation in the region. All I want to note is, to me, those sound like pragmatic arguments.
Yeah, I guess you can also. There is the third option. Like, if we want to protect the Christians, even if it's the best in the Middle East, maybe one of the Western countries is still better for the Christians.
Yes,
It might be just like pragmatic for that.
Yes, but the point I'm making is that these are pragmatic arguments. These are at least I think they are. Maybe he has a different definition of what pragmatism is to me, but um, uh, uh, he claims that he's not making pragmatic arguments here. That these aren't pragmatic arguments.
I don't know what these would be except for like pragmatic cases. It does though still seem to be the case that like there are a ton of alternatives that you can do to protect the Christians. Ones that like I'm thinking of that I know were mentioned in the debate is like you can just give refugee status to all the Christians to countries who are going to treat them better than Israel. Because the claim wasn't just that Israel is the best in the middle, isn't that Israel was a great quality of life, just that it was the best in the Middle East and it was satisfactory.
Yeah.
It can entirely be like, hey, bring them to America where we can make the Christian nationalist state or something.
And like, hey, like Corinth and me, we differ greatly on politics for the people who don't know who we are. This is something that could get me to support a specific limited form of mass migration, despite my typical tendencies of hating it.
And despite my tendencies, I'm against that kind of mass migration in this one particular case. We have to flip occasionally. Okay.
Occasionally.
In the West Bank, the Christian population that we have suggests that this might be Israel's fault, but how Christians uses the compound of the ancient church, that's who people blamed that for, Israel.
Okay.
Reason number three, and here I want to appeal to
one more thing. I promise. This is the last thing. So, he claims that. So I remember seeing this all over Twitter. So the claim was that Hamas is doing stuff in the St. Porphyrios Church. That was 2014. I don't think he provides a source for that. It was not Israel's fault for the bombing of that church. I think that's a source he does not provide, where he's clearly making the claim that it's not their fault.
That is actually fair to point out. Do we count the... What was this person who said his name? Bishop Alexios complained that Hamas used the compound to fire at Israel. It might be the case that that like necessitated Israel counterattacking it, just as like a self-defense thing. It might be the case like that could be like trivially argued that hey, they would like have to do this. They can't just let them be killed and to not fire back.
Wait, what am I? Okay, I'm seeing some weird shit here. So go to the site. It says in 2014, Bishop Alexios complains that Hamas uses the compound from the ancient St. Porphyrios Church to fire at Israel. That's what it says on the site. Then you click on the link, and it links to an article that was written in 1969.
I'm just gonna assume that the Christian Broadcasting Network had like a file date rollover or something issue, because this doesn't sound right. This date does not.
This is. Did Hamas exist in 1969?
The author George Thomas, I'm pretty sure, didn't.
Yeah, it's probably an issue with the site.
It has to be. Does it have a 2000 since Hamas's 2007 takeover of Gaza? Bro, they had fucking 38-year omniscience. They heard Doctor Strange seeing the possible timelines all converge at that takeover.
Okay.
Holy shit.
So that's that AP. That's the site.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to clarify.
Okay. Fucking hell.
Scripture. In Romans 9 through 11, St. Paul writes that his heart is aching for his fellow Israelites, that he would give up his own salvation if he could to save them, his fellow Jews, the Israelites by flesh, as he says. He makes it very clear that the true Israel are those who believe in Christ, but he nonetheless acknowledges that those who reject Christ are still the natural branches. He writes, as regard the gospel, they are enemies for your sake, but as regard election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers. only for the Jewish people is something like this ever uttered in the Bible. He says, for the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. He warns Christians and says, do not boast against the natural branch.
I'm going to pull up the Orthodox Study Bible part on this just to give a little bit of clarification for where the gifts are being seen as like irrevocable.
I have a paper copy.
I don't have a paper copy. I'm not Orthodox.
You should get a paper copy and become Orthodox.
No.
Well, I tried.
You did try. Which part? Do you remember which verse this was exactly? It was in Romans 11, I'm pretty sure.
I'm trying to.
I'm actually stupid. I think he actually did just link these.
Oh, no, go back up. Right there.
Romans 11,
28 through. Okay. Concerning the gospel, they are the enemies for your sake, but concerning the election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers. For the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. For as you were once disobedient to God, yet you have obtained mercy through their disobedience. Even so that they have now been disobedient, that through the mercy shown you, they may also obtain mercy. For God has committed them to disobedience, that he might have mercy on all. So there is commentary.
The commentary just skips these two verses specifically.
Oh, fuck's sake.
It
Okay,
has
so
27
the
and
surrounding
30.
commentaries. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Man, if only the guys writing the commentaries could have predicted that we were. If you see, Protestants can predict the future. Orthodox people can't. That's a major issue.
Yeah, like we gotta get to like CBN to write the next version.
Yeah, we do. Anyway. Okay. So, I mean, I'll just read through.
The church explains the unbelief of so many Jews is that the Gentiles are now being united to the remnant of the faithful Jews, and thus the body of believers together form the true Israel. In the Israel of God, which is the church, this true Israel is not based on biological ancestry, but on faithfulness to God's deliverer, the Messiah. In this understanding, all Israel will be saved. Paul reminds the Gentiles that they have no superiority over the Jews, for both Jew and Gentile were subject to disobedience, and both received salvation only through God's mercy. Those are like the...
Okay. Yeah, surrounding
The
commentary.
context from before it seems to imply that this is talking about the spiritual church. That's the term,
So-
right?
Well, I'm an Orthodox Christian, but I'm not going to pretend to know my theology as well as I should. But it's very clear that verse 28 is not talking about Christians, because it says, concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sake,
Okay, yep.
but concerning the election, they are beloved for the sake of their fathers. So this basically has to be talking about biological Jews, because they're not. If they were Christians, they wouldn't be concerning the gospel enemies for your sake. Like that just wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, this would necessarily have to be, I think, talking about biological Jews. But my goodness, I'm annoyed at the lack of commentaries on this, because that would have made this a lot clearer.
The only two verses that don't have commentary in that page
Are the two he used
Yeah,
in this debate, or two of the ones that he used.
that's actually insane. I'm going to assume that's purely coincidence and not him hard cherry picking things without context. But Jesus Christ.
Well, his interpretation of this makes sense, at least
Yeah.
internal to the text. In my opinion,
It's definitely plausible, right?
yeah.
It just... it might
yeah,
be the case that since gifts and calling of God are irrevocable, that in the later talking about mercy, it could be the case that it's contextualized in like he's granting them salvation as like the gift rather than the land of Israel itself.
Well, so okay, so this is the distinction between the views. I'll try to lay it out. So apostate prophets' view is that historically they were owed the land of Israel, and that was a gift given to the biological people. So given that they're irrevocable and that they are beloved for the sake of their fathers, they would constitute an Israel on his view, which is still owed the land. That seems to be what he's saying. Um, but a very clear other version is to say Israel in the Old Testament always referred to a group of people who weren't strictly blood related, which there's a lot of strong evidence for that. And Israel in the New Testament similarly relates to the church now. So these are the two different interpretations. I'm not going to say which one is strictly correct. I lean more towards the second, obviously.
Yeah.
But the point is to say his reading has legs. But note this: the line is, but concerning election, they are beloved for the sake of their fathers. It does not say especially beloved. That's not in there. And you'll see why I point this out if you haven't watched this debate before. I don't know who the fuck is watching this who hasn't seen the debate before. But the point is the word especially is not in there.
And also, I don't know. There seems to be something where it's at least, to me at least, it seems plausible that gifts and calling of God based on the 30 through 32 can also be referencing salvation.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, and because I'm only saying this because there is no commentary on these two verses, which is really annoying. But it's like, at this point, we're just doing sola scriptura prattle. What does this verse mean? And without like an Orthodox church like giving a statement on this, it doesn't seem like we can make any hardline claims referencing this.
Well, later on he cites specific well, okay.
Yeah.
We'll get to that when we get to that. I have articles.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm just saying I got articles. I can throw you at you.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Israel by flesh. If you do, remember that you do not support the root, but the root supports you. He prophesied, he said that there is a partial hardening upon Israel at this moment, but that God will, through a mystery, change things, and in the future remove sin from the people of Israel and graft them back in, and therefore all Israel will be saved. St. Cyril of Alexandria also said, based on this, that Israel in the future will be reconciled to Christ through faith. St. Augustine said that the survival of the Jewish people is a huge sign from God, and that they will eventually be reconciled. St. John Chrysostom, despite his harsh rhetoric about Jews, said that it is bound to happen in the future before the end, that the Jewish people will be grafted back in by God. I want to finally also quote a respected Orthodox hierarch, Metropolitan Callistus Ware, who recently died, who also very, very emotionally in the 90s wrote an article in which he said that the Jews are still God's chosen people until the end. Let us never show the slightest disrespect or hatred toward them. I went to Israel myself. I saw...
One thing I do want to point out, none of these quotes have anything to do with Jewish homeland.
Yes. I have read the article which he's referencing with Callistus Ware. I haven't read the rest of the sources. Because
Which ones?
I had known about this source ahead of time, like a long time ahead of time, before this debate even happened, because he had referenced it on stream before. It does say what he's saying, and it says it very, very explicitly. It says something along the lines of, Jews are still God's chosen people. and we should never disrespect Jews. And it's very clear he's talking about modern religious Jews, because he, in the opening lines of the article, he makes a comparison to rabbis. So it's very clear what he's saying in this article. And you're going to get a virus pop. Oh, okay, you didn't, because you're using Opera GX. But
Yeah.
because this is a sketchy site. But yeah, this article is basically making his point regarding Jews, but it does not make his point regarding Zion.
Yeah, like at least from what he said and what you said, the don't show them disrespect is just saying don't be an anti-Zionist. It's not saying don't be to be a Zionist. You still have that neutral state there.
Yeah.
And this is
yeah, and I would agree with that. But the funny thing is about specifically the particular claims which Callistos Ware makes, those are explicitly contradicted by an article written by a different metropolitan. Well, not written by a different metropolitan, but explicitly endorsed by another metropolitan. And by endorsed, I mean the guy. Hold on, I'm going to pull it up.
okay.
The article straight up says, "This is in complete." I'm sorry, I have my notes scattered. I don't want to misrepresent what the article says.
We all have our notes scattered everywhere.
Yeah. Here it is. So the article is not written by, but endorsed by Metropolitan Vitali of, which is the chief hierarch of Rokor, which is the Russian church, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. So I posted it. So this is from the Orthodox Life magazines. This is a blog spot, which translated a bunch of them. This article, it basically says the exact opposite. So of a lot of the stuff he's saying about Jews. Now, I actually don't know what the correct position is on this topic, because I haven't done a deep dive into this. I just knew that this article existed because, well, I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and some of them are a specific sort of person. So you'll find some stuff. I'll just say. There seems to be a split on this topic. I don't know. Maybe this. I don't want to make it seem like I'm making a specific religious claim when I actually am not super familiar with the topic.
I think this at least gets us to like the hard claim of like there being something that the Christians should do, just like loses. If like Rokor, like heads are saying this and they're in communion with the Orthodox Church, both them being Orthodox, it seems like this view is at least fine as well. Maybe it's not like the correct one, but it might not be the wrong. As long as it's not the wrong one, it's permissible here.
That's what it seems like. But when I say it's the opposite, I'm not saying that Vitali here isn't saying you should hate all the Jews. He's not saying that. Instead, what he's saying is they're not the chosen. That's the specific opposition. He's like no Christian metropolitan, no Orthodox Christian metropolitan will say hate the Jews. They'll if you find me one who says that, I will be shocked, because I do not believe you will find a single metropolitan who says that. But they will make claims regarding chosenness.
Nish, become an Orthodox metropolitan so I can show them one. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
For the people there when I was still an ice-cold atheist, I experienced the people there. I had interactions with religious Jews there. My time in Israel is something that led me to question everything. I realized one thing, which is that these people are amazing, despite what everyone says. And it didn't make sense to me that people around the world would vilify the Jewish people. It certainly cannot be because of the way they are. When I open the Bible today, in which I firmly believe, I see that St. Paul loved the Jews who rejected Christ. God still loves them and still has a plan for them forever. I love them too, and I think everyone should support them in their fight for survival instead of letting them die. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that 12-minute opening from Ridvan.
Do you want to give final commentary on his opening, or just go right into Andrew's?
So just briefly, yeah, I'll say my short piece.
Okay.
First two arguments: Israel should be there because it stops the caliphate from forming. Israel should be there because Christians are better off in Israel than other countries in the region. And the last argument is the Jews are still God's chosen people. That last one is a non sequitur. The first one seems like a slippery slope, and the second one seems like a false dichotomy. Like I don't see how else to view this.
Yeah. Those are my exact thoughts when I mentioned it to Tech the other day. I think I said those three exact things. Which,
but yeah, that's my thoughts, and it sounds like we're on the same page there.
yeah.
Also, he says in the stream afterwards that he's not making a pragmatic argument. The first two arguments, maybe he means something else than what I understand pragmatism to be, but it seems like the first two are very practical, very pragmatic.
He might... I don't even know what I would say to like pretend like it's not a pragmatic argument. Maybe it's like a Christian pragmatic argument, but not like pragmatism categorical.
Maybe AP on the side has been reading a bunch of William James and is like, actually, I'm not relying on the work of William James and his form of pragmatism to make this argument. Therefore, it's not pragmatism. But I don't think he's saying that.
I have no idea what else it could be. So let's get into Andrew's.
We'll kick it over to Andrew for his 12-minute opening as well. The floor is all yours, Andrew.
I am going to be
Good evening,
scathing
ladies
at
and
parts of
gentlemen.
Andrew's, by the way.
Before we dive into the topic at hand,
I'm sure.
Can we get a standing ovation for Ridvan and his acceptance as an Orthodox catechumen? Welcome home, brother. And now it's time for you to lose. The topic tonight is significantly narrower than I think many people are comfortable with. It's often in the ambiguity that people make emotional arguments instead of using logic and reason, and that's exactly what you will see tonight from my opponent, which you did, which is why I wanted to narrow the topic to avoid this ambiguity. You'll see from him emotional rhetoric, but no actual arguments, which we didn't. The topic at hand is simple enough.
Wait, hold on.
To be fair,
Yes, he made actual arguments.
they were bad arguments. They were
Yeah.
fallacious arguments, but they were arguments.
Yes,
So-
that's definitely those are definitely arguments.
But there was a lot of like emotional begging before that. The prior to the arguments, the entire idea of like, oh, they are just like violent people who've been attacking things. Oh wait, that was the rhetoric around like Hamas just saying we want to annihilate Jews and things like that was largely emotional. So,
Well, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing like an
Yeah.
emotional appeal like that as like background info, but
Yeah.
but
It still
the
is.
problem is that was a lot of his that was a very large amount of his opening was that.
Which even like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? That's is it pathos?
Yeah.
I always completely mess them up. But
Ethos. I think.
ethos. It's one of them. It's just using a rhetorical style. So like, it's not an argument, but it still is like fine to use, and especially when you're pairing it with an argument. The issue is he just used way too much of it, time on that, and the rest of his time on bad arguments. But yeah, Andrew's
Yeah.
completely wrong about there being no argument there.
Well,
The proposition.
sorry.
No, what were you saying?
Oh, well, I just like AP comes from, okay. A lot of debate can be like fit into two categories broadly with some overlap, in my opinion, from like watching this for so long. You have like Phil Bros and fact nuts, I guess, where like the fact nut side would be like flat earthers, or like people who debate against flat earthers, or like debates on is God real, which has a lot of overlap, but it's mostly just a who can throw more facts at the other person and who can. Well, actually, no. That's much more Phil Bro. But the point is, AP focuses almost entirely on the facts side of debate, whereas Andrew mostly focuses on the philosophy side of debate, which led to, I think, AP not understanding Andrew's arguments that well.
Yeah.
That's my overarching opinion on the debate sphere as a whole. And as long as Phil Bros don't look like autistics, they can generally do much better in debates.
I mean,
But you know, it's also possible to just look like a complete autist and lose optically.
yeah, I think that actually tends to be like a benefit Andrew has. A lot of the larger creators are just used to being like, I'm going to throw 700 descriptive sources at you because the other person, they're just disagreeing on like a descriptive statement. And Andrew just doesn't get caught up in that. He just says, okay, if I grant that, that has nothing to do with the prescriptive part. And that generally throws people off. And with AP coming from like debating Muslims, a lot of that is just like throwing descriptive stuff at them. Hey, this is why the Quran is wrong. This is something that contradicts the Quran. Yada, yada, yada. So when you get into like a should claim, the is doesn't really matter.
And for the record, I'm not making fun of either style. It's just Phil Bro is an insult, so I got to come up with an opposite. I got to come up with a new one. It's fact nut. You know, Craig FTFE, he's a fact nut. I like him. He's a good debater when he's on his topic. And AP, like, we've obviously been rather harsh to AP, and I'm sure Corinth has a lot of harsh things to say about Andrew. AP is a great debater when it comes to Islam. Watch any of his debates on MDD, except for this one, and you will see him just completely steamroll Muslims and make them look like idiots, and also get his life threatened. Which is first time I've seen that on MDD.
AP is especially good, like, on his topic. There's, like, just no denying that. The issue is he's not on his topic, and Andrew is especially good on this kind of argument. So it's...
Andrew would lose to AP if Andrew was trying to defend Islam.
Yeah.
Okay. Is, do Christians have some sort of ought to support the political ideology of Zionism? Apostate Prophet says yes, I say no. For the purpose of this debate, I will be using the most charitable definition of Zionism, which is the one AP agreed to pre-debate, so that everyone's clear. A movement for, originally, the reestablishment and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation, which is now Israel.
I'm pausing it here just to point out that Andrew's definition is slightly different than the one AP gave out for what I'm calling definition 2. A Jewish state now known as Israel is AP's definition 2. And Andrew's using the movement for the reestablishment and the protection of a Jewish state now known as Israel.
Yes.
AP doesn't do the reestablishment or the maintain, but that just seems to be something we can like tacitly apply to it. It doesn't seem to be like they're disagreeing.
But also, and this is important, Andrew's definition does not include America. Anyway, that's it.
Seems straightforward enough, so let's get into it. I will be presenting 4 logical arguments for why Christians have no such obligation, secular or otherwise, to support this Jewish political endeavor. I will order them with my weakest objection first and my strongest objection last. Note, I have many more arguments than the ones I'll lay out tonight, but for the sake of time, I'll just stick with 4. To preface these arguments, I'll explain that Ridvan cannot make the claim that the religion of Judaism isn't part of Zionism. The right of return applies to both religious and ethnic Jews. Israeli law defines Jewish as someone who is born to a Jewish mother or who has converted to Judaism. In other words, the very people group defined as both religious Jews and non-religious Jews, emphasizing all Jews have the right of return. According to legal expert Nancy C. Richmond in her analysis of Israel's law of return, published in Penn State International Law Review, quote, while Israel is not a theocracy, the Jewish religion has a central role in Israeli politics because the main purpose of the country's establishment was to create an independent Jewish state, end quote. This analysis is shared by virtually every scholar I could find, pro or anti-Zionist, and is logical due to the fact that if Zionism really had nothing to do with the Jewish religion, it wouldn't specify Jewish converts as being allowed this right of return. Very simple.
I just want to give a little bit of emphasis on why this is relevant. A lot of AP's biblical verses in his third argument or his third reason for this was pointing out ethnic Jews. So if this is a state applying to religious convert Jews that are not ethnic Jews, it does seem to be a case where the verses wouldn't be supporting this given state.
Not necessarily, yeah. But the other thing is, this is kind of a loss for Andrew because AP goes on to correctly repudiate Andrew for this. And that's the best, most specific. I think that's one of the best, most, maybe just the best specific source Andrew gives, and it's to a point which AP doesn't disagree with.
Yep.
And
no, I think his argument requires him to disagree with this, right? The argument he's making around the Bible verses around this would be talking about ethnic Jews. If it's applying to religious Jews,
it would have to be blood relation. Yeah, it would have to be blood relation.
Which by saying well, the modern state of Israel doesn't only have blood relation, it has something additional to it. It's not being in line with the scripture. So we can't use scripture as a reason to support this. So I think that is
but to sort of, I guess, so, okay. I believe, just assuming that all of AP's biblical verses are accurate, then a state which emphasizes the blood relative as well as religious would be still emphasizing the blood relative and thus be, valid enough to be, if we're assuming we have to help God in a sense to fulfill biblical prophecy to give Israel their land back, or to give the Jews the land of Israel, like the blood Jews, not religious Jews, because obviously, some black guy converts to Judaism, very clearly not ethnic, not a blood relative.
Yeah, but this just gets us into the idea of if we have that and we have the all ethnic Jews there, and then they're also nuking people, just dropping nukes wherever they want to, there wouldn't be the obligation to support it because of that additional aspect to it. That state wouldn't be in line with the state or what the verses would be describing as a state if he's correct on it.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, because it couldn't be a religious and ethnic state. For the for the verses, it would have to emphasize the ethnic part, which it's doing to a degree. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, just fully granting that those verses would imply you want an ethnic state. The modern state of Israel is not an ethnic Jewish state; it's an ethnic and religious Jewish state.
Yes,
we'd want to change that to a purely ethnic state, so we wouldn't be supporting Israel. But that's just a little tidbit that we should. It's not granting that. It's just if it was this source does harm AP.
This is an important preface, as apostate prophets going to argue this as a secular state, and that's simply untrue as a matter of fact. This leads me to argument 1. There is no ought under Christian ethics to support other religions which specifically oppose doctrine and an establishment of a homeland for them. The Jewish religion is acknowledged as being incorrect by every major Christian branch. This includes the Eastern Orthodox Church, which apostate prophet is converting to, as well as mainline Protestant and Roman Catholics. The specific problem here is particularly the denial of Jesus Christ being the Messiah, as outlined in simple language in 1 John 2:23. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also. In simple terms, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you don't worship the same God Christians worship. Now, this is also found in John 14:6. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. Christ as a Messiah is central to the creed of every major Christian profession of faith. So my first argument concludes, Christians ought not support this heretical for Christian political ideology, and supporting heretical ideology is itself sinful as it violates Christian ethics. The argument itself, premise 1, Christians who support heretical ideology denying the divinity of Christ are sinning. Premise 2, religious Jews reject the divinity of Christ after he's revealed himself to them as the Savior. Premise 3, if religious Jews reject Christ, they are incorrect, and Christians who claim they aren't are spreading heresy. Conclusion, religious Jews are, by Christian standards, wrong and should not be supported by Christians who would be spreading a heresy if they acknowledge Jewish theology is correct or give it support. To reduce it to a much simpler view, if one of my daughters had an OnlyFans, I would still love her. We are commanded, as we were commanded, to love the Jews and the Muslims, but I'm not going to promote it. I'm not going to promote it.
Oh, so I just need to be really mad for a minute, because that, when he tried to put it in premises and conclusions, that just made it not follow at all. That was maybe the worst attempt at formalizing an argument I've seen in a long time. He said that there's...
Can you pull up a written form? I assume you have a written form.
I can rewrite it out. I tried to correct based on what... I'll do a correction of what the argument could have been given, the premises after, but we'll just go through
Jesus says, I the way, the truth, central to the Christians ought not support this heretical for Christian political ideology, and supporting heretical ideology is itself sinful as it violates Christian ethics. The argument itself, premise 1, Christians who support heretical ideology denying the divinity of Christ are sinning. Premise 2,
Christians who support heretical ideology that the ideology denies the divinity of Christ.
religious Jews reject the divinity of Christ after he's revealed himself to them as the Savior. Premise 3, if religious Jews reject Christ, they are incorrect, and Christians who claim
Okay.
they aren't spreading
this is messy.
heresy. Conclusion, religious Jews are, by Christian standards, wrong and should not be supported by Christians who would be spreading a heresy if they acknowledge Jewish theology is correct or give it support. To reduce it to a much simpler view.
But like this, he's just adding so many terms. None of these, the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises. A much easier way he could have put this was something I also posted, and I'll read it. Christians have no obligation to support a geopolitical homeland for heretics. Religious Jews are heretics by denying the divinity of Christ. Therefore, Christians have no obligation to support a geopolitical homeland for religious Jews, which is going to be modern state of Israel. Like, you should still love them in this case. Yeah. But like...
Well, this is actually really, really bad now that I'm looking at it in more detail, because it's equating. Andrew's argument does this. It equates. Okay, support's a broad word. Support isn't clear what support means here. I assume when Andrew says support, he means agree with, but no, that can't be what he means here. Support would be like give monetary, like an amount of monetary goods, I suppose. Okay, so supporting a heretical ideology would be a sin, but supporting a person who holds it isn't necessarily sinful, even on a Christian view.
Yeah. Which he then goes on to say with his example of like if his daughter has an OnlyFans, he would still love her. He's still supporting her. He's just not supporting what she's doing.
Yes, but this is very messy.
Yeah, like this is.
And by messy, I mean bad, by the way, for people who aren't following. It's a bad argument when he formalized it.
This is... I DM'd him like, dude, what the fuck? Just, if you're going to do this shit, just send it to me first to check over it, because that was terrible. This is one of the worst arguments I've fucking seen. I swear to God.
Also, on the stream afterwards, David Wood and Apostate Prophet, when they were reviewing this, they criticized this argument very heavily for going against the parable of the Good Samaritan, which it seems to on face value, because in the parable of the Good Samaritan, you have a Samaritan, not Jewish, who helps a Jew. And Jesus was giving this, so Jew means your group, Samaritan means out group in sort of like an existential sense. Like we're talking almost Schmittian, other. If you don't know what that means, read Schmidt. I don't know what to tell you. The point is, you are supposed to help people who are in need. So they criticize Andrew as saying, you ought not help people in need if they disagree with you on like heresy, like, which is not what he's trying to say here, I don't think, but that's not what he's trying to say. It is what he says, though.
Yeah, because of the later contextualization in terms of his daughter, I do think it's reasonable to like try and restate it for him here. Obviously, we also need to acknowledge, hey, this isn't something AP should have done in the debate. Andrew should be like deservedly like given shit for this argument just because of how poorly he says it, and that is like his own fault. But to give a fair extension, it's like, do you have an obligation to help them? No. Do you have an obligation to help them in their interpersonal life? No, but it might be supererogatory, which is like you should give people charity, but you're not under the obligation to like give the homeless person $20. It's still good to give like a homeless person $20 or like get them food. You're not doing something wrong by not getting them that. It still is like good in that case. But Zionism is going farther than the Jew in need should be supported. It's going to the point where we should keep propping up their homeland. We should support them having some blood and soil idea in the Middle East for both ethnic and religious heretics. And that might not fall under the Good Samaritan parable.
Yeah, like the Samaritan in this. So the Samaritan, while he would be the Jew's neighbor, that would not mean that you should help the Samaritan establish a Samaritan state where Samaritans rule. That it wouldn't follow from the parable, but you should you should help out Samaritans if they're struggling on the side of the road, if they're not beaten up by like 3 dudes.
Yeah, Andrew absolutely fucked up this argument.
If one of my daughters had an OnlyFans, I would still love her. We are commanded, as we were commanded, to love the Jews and the Muslims, but I'm not going to promote it. Argument 2, the pragmatic argument and its response. Ridvan focuses a lot on the pragmatic approach through geopolitics to make an ought for support for Christians towards Zionism, focusing on the anti-Muslim factor rather than the Christian ethics factor. The pragmatic argument from him is simple. If we have to choose to support the state of Israel, who are seemingly at least sympathetic to the West and Christian nations, then we should, or Muslims will dominate the region unopposed. There's no way, and they are in no way sympathetic to the West. This is, in my opinion, his best argument, but it falls flat because it focuses on a false dialectic that relies on fallacious reasoning. In his view of pragmatism, he presents two choices where there are actually hundreds of choices, or more. For instance, there isn't, from a purely pragmatic approach, any reason I can think of for the protectors of Israel, in this case the West, to demand Israel open itself up to tens of thousands of Christian missionaries yearly and give them all enfranchised status. Many, many thousands of Christians would love to live there. This would effectively end the, quote, Jewish state apparatus, which would appease Muslims and also create a dynamic for which Christians could begin their work of converting Jews to Christianity, which is their mandate. Jews would not be persecuted under this arrangement and would still be able to freely practice Judaism as they saw fit and would be enfranchised to vote just like they are in all other nations. They also would have more protections from other nations who have vested interest in their settlers. Will this plan work? I have no idea. No clue. But to pretend it couldn't be done creates a false dialectic that only two choices exist where many choices exist. Ridvan would have to effectively argue Israel would need to remain a Jewish state from a secular view, which, to quote a thing he says often, that makes no sense. Why does the state actually need to be a Jewish ethno-state and Jewish religious state in order to protect Jews? That's actually rather stupid. All Western nations afford Jewish people the same rights as all other citizens get. Ridvan, from the pragmatic approach, would actually have to argue that Israel remain a Jewish state from a secular standpoint, which he can't do. As long as the state protected Jews and they were allowed to practice their religion, why would it be a problem if it wasn't dominated by Jews themselves? To formalize this argument to Ridvan, premise one, Jews deserve a homeland for both ethnic Jewish individuals and religious Jewish individuals. This is his view. Premise two, the Jewish homeland is necessary because it protects Jews from persecution. Premise three, the Jewish homeland can't let in majorities of other groups for its own protection. Conclusion, Israel must remain an ethnic religious state with a supermajority of Jewish people. Now you can see here the conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premise. The key here seems to be that Jewish individuals deserve protection from atrocity, but the case isn't being made why they would specifically need a Jewish state to do so. Early anti-Zionist Jews made similar counter-arguments as well. Social dominance in culture doesn't assure prevention from atrocity for Jews any better than being a protected class under a different dominant culture. This seemingly can be viewed right now by the conflict going on with Hamas, at least not logically and not pragmatically. Also, we could use accelerated pragmatism here to point out the absurdity of this false dialectic by simply pointing out it could be pragmatic to nuke the entire Middle East, Israel included, and no longer worry about Middle Eastern conflicts and cultures ever. But my guess is most people would rightly state that would be against Christian ethics, which rejects pragmatism for Christian ethics, which Ridvan also should do. Now, even in easily dismantling the pragmatic argument, I will simply now grant it and the false dialectic of a binary choice to simply point out.
So, Ridvan or AP does not actually make the argument which Andrew lays out as one of his three arguments. So the three arguments were caliphate, Christians are treated better there, and also Jews are chosen. So, but he does state what Andrew was saying that he does prior to it, where he states that if you're anti-Israel, if you're anti-Zionist, then that's going to lead to all of these deaths. He does say that. The reason I'm pointing this out is that AP insists that he didn't say that.
Which part does Andrew say he said? I might have missed it.
Even if we now do, now even if
was it before this?
So Andrew, so the argument, like the four-premise argument, Andrew is saying that Ridvan is making the claim that without the Jewish state, you're going to end up with a bunch of dead Jews, basically. Ridvan says he doesn't say that, but he does say that. Just not as one of his three major arguments. He says it prior to, in like the start of the history rundown, I believe, is when he says it.
I thought that was a part of the caliphate argument.
It might be a
no?
part of the caliphate.
In
It might be
easily
a part of the
dismantling
caliphate.
would no longer worry about Middle Eastern conflicts and cultures ever. Pragmatism. In easily dismantling the pragmatic argument, I will simply now grant it and the false dialectic of a binary choice to
Yeah, like that was a portion of the caliphate. I'm like 99% sure. Whatever.
simply point out that even if I do, it still doesn't provide an ought for why Christians must support Zionism, which is both hilarious and ironic, but does provide us for an ought for Christians to not support it because you're being presented with a false binary. My last argument is the most important. It combines two arguments together for the sake of time.
Okay. Do you want to go anywhere over this one? Because I do think this was Andrew's probably strongest argument. Just showing that there were other choices that could be done, laying at the issue with pragmatism in general, and how if we're holding to the principles of like we should prevent the caliphate because it's going to put us to danger, it's going to be harmful to the Christians, we can just like nuke the entire area. That seems to like be the direct implication of this as like a principled choice. Do you think there's
a possibility?
Sorry, what did you say?
I'm sorry. My internet crapped itself. So, I'm trying to find the particular section, but I believe it was during the very start of his opening is when he said it.
What exactly did he say?
That anti-Zionism leads to the death of all Jews in the region.
Yeah, that was during his opening. Like first
yeah,
minute.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm saying that is because that it may have been a part of his caliphate art. It, as a matter of fact, I would assume that it is. But my point is that wasn't like a major part that he emphasized in the caliphate argument. It's basically, Muslims bad, therefore we should support Israel, which he says he's not making that argument. Like, I don't.
I mean, I think it was part of the caliphate argument because he was also using Hamas in that case. Hamas both said, we're going to wipe out Israel, we're going to wipe out those Jews, and then we're going to establish the caliphate.
Yeah.
That was the quote. So it has to be a part of that.
Okay. Yeah. That's true.
He also, he definitely also.
He is citing because he's citing like a Hamas official for that.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the quote just because. The goal of Hamas. In 4 years, we will cleanse Palestine of the filth of the Jews. The next goal is rebuilding the caliphate in Jerusalem. That's all one part of his quote from Fadi Hamad.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, never mind. I'm just trying to find timestamps, but the timestamp thing is actually ancillary. I'm just going to say I'm wrong. Okay. Adam.
This argument.
Adam Dohl just lost the debate.
I lost.
Focuses on the
I
biggest
lost to Corinth.
Not for Christians.
The liberal.
And requires a preface. The first preface is that Israel refuses to disclose if it has nuclear weapons.
This is something that I'm confused about. He says he combines arguments 3 and 4 into this, and I don't understand what the third or fourth argument is outside of like being one argument together.
Third has something to do with nukes. Fourth has to do with the Antichrist.
Okay.
And will neither confirm nor deny if they do, nor allow any inspection of them if they do. Our own CIA has confirmed they do, but they don't disclose it. Second, the Israeli government works hand in hand with the Temple Institute and American evangelicals. Also, there's an organization called CUFI, or Christians Unified for Israel. CUFI has 10 million members, and Israel doesn't even have 10 million citizens. CUFI spreads the false heresy of dispensationalism and hosts charismatic doctrine heresy as well. By Ritvan's own faith, he knows these are heresies. CUFI is on over 300 college campuses and growing. Their stated goal is to educate millions of Americans on these heresies, according to their own website, quote, through our 16 social media accounts, websites, blogs, daily briefs, to bring in groups of pastors and
Also, just to be clear, the Kufi thing is an entire red herring by Andrew. It doesn't further the argument at all.
next generation influencers and students to Israel every year. Guys like Charlie Kirk and, dare I say, Ridvan and David Wood and others. To quote, those would be the types of influencers who would be their target. Not saying that Kufi paid for any of that. I'm just saying that would be the target. To reach thousands through Kufi Weekly and Israel Collective videos on YouTube, has brought in over 1,000 major influencers, including celebrities. All of this is right from their site. Now, what do these people want, you ask? Well, this is going to blow your mind, but this is what they want. They want to assist with the fulfillment of biblical prophecy to bring about a new false Messiah and usher in an Armageddon. Not kidding. Not kidding. Now, the Temple Institute's goal in Israel, using both private and Israeli state money, is to rebuild the third temple and name a Messiah, which Christians know is a false Messiah. Israel, the supposed secular state, gives large swaths of money to the Temple Institute, and many government officials back this undertaking. So remember when I said Christians ought not support heresies? Well, here's why. Right now, this second, major personalities on the right, such as Charlie Kirk, most of the Daily Wire, even perhaps David Wood and Ridvan themselves, who I like, know for sure that any Messiah named by Israel will be Antichrist. They know it. Now, perhaps not the Antichrist, but the spirit of Antichrist will be with whoever this person is, and they have to denounce Christians definitionally. Have to. So to recap, the supposed secular Zionist government is giving money to the religious Zionists in Israel and get American support to do this with both American government money and direct aid, with mega preachers like John Hagee leading the charge in America with Kufi to back this endeavor to usher in Antichrist.
Again, I just need to restate it. The entire Kufi thing, the John Hagee thing, this is an entire red herring. It has nothing to do with furthering the argument, and I don't know why he put it in here, because it just weakens himself.
He doesn't establish why Kufi is relevant, because he doesn't establish that, or maybe I missed it, but I don't think he establishes that Kufi believes in dispensationalism as a group. Like, obviously,
I mean, like, you can
Kirk
just
does.
grant it does. Like, Kufi believes in dispensationalism. They promote Zionism. What does that have to do with Christians shouldn't support Zionism?
Well, so it would be another piece of evidence to say the Israeli state is supporting heretical groups. Supporting the Israeli state indirectly supports the heretical group. And it's just like another heretical group, them and the Temple Institute.
It might be the case if he did keep it separated and use this as like argument 3, right? But this has nothing to do with when you're combining the arguments. Like, he has a lot more groundwork to do to establish, hey, Israel is like funding these groups. I have a feeling that's going to be like spurious information. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to tie that. That's going to be like a fairly conspiracy theoried, and we'll fall into like, oh, the caliphate type argument of like, well, it might be the case, but we don't really have good reason to think this. We have like speculation, we have conjecture, we have like maybe some people who are like Jay Spurging on the internet are going to be like saying this a lot, but there's a far leap from having this as like a motivatory reason, at least for like sorry, where's
well, it is true that he doesn't provide a good source on Kufi being funded by Israel, or well, he says that the Temple Institute is funded by I don't know that there's evidence of that. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that they're supported to some degree by Israel, but funding is a different thing.
Yeah. I think like
supported as in Israel's like, yeah, help us out, but not like to the degree that what he's talking about.
Yeah. I think this is this argument is just straight up weaker than his second argument. I think he should have stuck with that one rather than trying to act like this is his best one.
So, Ridvan, I will see any argument you make for why Christians ought to support Zionism, and I will raise you one Antichrist as an ought not. This is the most powerful ought not for Christians to support Zionism, and it is really the one argument I want Ridvan to address, as it's my primary argument. So, the formal argument goes like this. Premise 1, Christians should not support false Messiah or Antichrist, ever. Premise 2, Zionists are attempting to name a false Messiah. Premise 3, secular and religious Zionists are working together to bring about biblical prophecy and name a false Messiah. Conclusion, Christians shouldn't support Zionism, especially not as...
That also, I don't think is a valid... It's closer than his first argument, but I don't think it's valid in this case. I think he had like one or two more either like implicit premises he has to clarify there. Like, I don't know. This argument also doesn't necessitate using Kufi.
No, it doesn't.
Which is, again, like, it's just a red herring. I don't understand why he threw that in there.
Zionist nation with an Antichrist at its head and nukes, which it won't acknowledge. False Messiah, head of a state with nukes. Genius, Ridvan! Now, to end it very quickly with this, I'm going to enjoy this spirited debate, but I really want you to address this argument. With that, the floor is back. Go ahead.
Much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for those openings. We'll jump into the 5-minute rebuttals. AP, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Okay, now. So when Andrew announced that he was going...
I guess I want to pause it here first. Which of the arguments do you think Andrew made was the strongest? Because I'm clearly on record for saying argument 2 was.
I think that I think that argument 1 would have been better if he just fixed the premises and clarified what support meant.
Yeah.
I think that with a bit of interpretation, it comes out to be the best one for specifically Christians. And I think the third argument is actually just a restatement of the first argument, because you're not, there's no guarantee that if the Temple Institute gets the temple rebuilt and you have all of these Jewish groups that are doing all of the Jewish stuff, that necessarily an Antichrist would come about and become the head of the nation. Like that just isn't guaranteed under the Orthodox Christian paradigm that would necessarily occur.
Yeah.
So the third argument would have to be modified to be actually just a restatement of the first argument, I think.
I agree. I do think that...
And then the first argument would have to be...
Yeah, I think if he fixed argument 1, it would just be the strongest. But it's hard to put, like, that as the strongest, given how much he just fucked it up at the end. Like...
Yeah, but
yeah. Sorry. You ready? Or you want to talk a little bit more about it?
I think that... I think that... I actually... So far, if the debate were to stop right here, I'd say that I think Andrew would win based off of, providing an argument that's valid. Whereas Ridvan has, a slippery slope, a false dichotomy, and a non sequitur. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Well, let's see how this goes into the... I hate that they do formal rebuttals. We'll see how this goes.
Thank you. Okay, now. So when Andrew announced that he was going to have a very, very amazing opening speech here, I was expecting something incredible. What I heard is not very impressive, to be very honest. Is anybody actually impressed? Because here's the issue. He said that I'm going to rely on...
I just need to stop and pause to say, El Crucible crew, we should have been hearing a ton of like, woo, me's, us, at that very point in time. I know a bunch of people were out there. They just failed. They let us all down. That was a day shift L.
On pragmatism, wrong, false. He said that I'm going to argue from emotion. Maybe I mixed emotion into it, rightly so, but I argued on emotion based on scripture. Number 3, he listed a bunch of things that I never even addressed, that I never even think about, and he even made the false assumption that I would call Israel a secular state. Israel is not a secular state. Israel is in some way secular, but Israel is very, very explicitly, from the very beginning of its foundation, partly built on religious grounds. This is acknowledged from the very beginning. It is a compromise that was made in the history of Israel, in the founding of Israel, that it would be partially founded upon religious Jewish values and partially on secular values, because the secular ones were the ones who advocated for the building of Israel, but the religious ones were also in on it and wanted also their rights to be protected, which only makes sense. There is one big issue that Andrew here has a problem with. In my opening statement, I never ever argued that it is an obligation for Christians to support Israel. I did say
Well, hold on. I got a
Christians
few thoughts.
should.
So, first of all, he was absolutely making a pragmatic argument.
Yeah.
Like, 2 of those arguments are absolutely pragmatic argument. Like, the caliphate one is definitely a pragmatic argument, and the Christians in Israel, definitely a pragmatic argument. Those are both definitely pragmatic arguments. To say that they're not, I don't know what he thinks that means. The other thing, sorry.
Yeah, I'm fully in agreement with that. The other thing is like, he's implying that the only time he mixed emotion into it was on the religious argument. I think emotion's heavily mixed into all of those premises. When he's talking about the Islamic Caliphate, he's emotionally loading it like, these are people who for the past 1,400 years have nothing but slaughter. He talks about how Hamas is just out to kill all the Jews, and how and being an anti-Zionist means you want Jews in the Middle East wiped off the face of the earth. Putting it as like the best place for Christians, is saying like, well, this is the only place that these people are doing good. I don't get why he's saying the only place that he put emotion into it was the scripture. That was, I think, the place he put the least emotion into the argument.
Yeah. Maybe he thinks it has to do with... Maybe he thinks it refers to talking about emotion, and he was certainly talking about emotions in the scriptural argument, and the other 2 he wasn't talking about him. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to be charitable, but by me making him by my trying to be charitable is making him look like an idiot. So maybe it's not charitability.
Yeah.
In that case.
There's like some point where it's like we can try and pretend he said something that he didn't say in like charity, but that at a point that just becomes like almost paternalistic. Like, it's not about what we could imagine AP would say. It's about what he did say and what a charitable interpretation of what he said is.
Yeah. But he's... Point is, he's wrong about his own argument.
Yeah.
Or at least 2 of the 3. The biblical interpretation, that's not a pragmatic argument. That's a non sequitur. It's not even a valid argument.
Okay. You ready to keep going?
Yeah.
I did say it would be the right thing. I did say it would be morally right. I never ever made it look like it is an obligation for Christians, or it is within their religion that they must support the state of Israel. I argued that within certain things that we read within the Bible, which, by the way, he never even came close to addressing, and I'm sure he will not come close to addressing because he can't really get out of that. it would be the right thing to do for Christians not to stand by and let those people die whom God, if you open Romans 9 to 11, still loves despite their unbelief. I want everyone to...
This is an entire straw man. Nothing Andrew said implies that he's letting these people die. It's just he's not supporting this specific state. There's even in his secondary case that he gave for, we can send Christians to the Middle East to go against this. They'll be like that. Implicit in that is these people are staying alive. I'm sure if you asked Andrew, hey, would we be fine with taking these people and like giving them refugee status all across the West to keep them alive? Like America takes like 1 million, Europe takes like 200,000, things like this. I'm sure he'd say
mass immigration.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd say, yeah, sure. We should be like helping or protecting these people. But Zionism isn't just keeping Jewish people alive. It is, as they both agreed, maintaining the state of Israel. And AP's heavily conflating the two things here.
So to like give like another obvious example. Like I'm American, I live in America. If I say the American government should cease existing in its current form, that doesn't mean I want to, kill Corinth. I might want to kill him for other reasons, but but that wouldn't be a valid one. Or like, be one that's implicit in the statement.
Which, it gets really annoying. I know you're also annoyed by this.
Yes.
Like the 50 million ways that they use Zionism.
So, okay. Yes, so the term Jew has I've seen it used 4 different ways. Religious, believes in Judaism. Ethnic, as in has a blood relation to Abraham, or either like Ashkenazi or Sephardic, or all the other different groups. Or another one that I've actually seen is citizen of Israel, the country of Israel. So you could have a Black Christian living in the country of Israel, which some people would refer to as a Jew. And then there were if I remember hearing a 4th one somewhere, but I forgot what that one. And people will mix and match definitions when they're in these arguments. One thing that really annoys me is that what AP is doing right here is he's associating support for Zionism, which is a political ideology. It exists entirely in the brain, with not wanting Jews to die. I can be against Zionism completely. I can say, no, there should be no Jewish ethno-state anywhere in the world, and still want a precisely 0 Jews to die at the same time. It's possible, logically and practically, to destroy the nation-state of Israel. Sorry, the state, not the nation refers to people, state refers to governing in this case. So destroy the state of Israel. There's no more state. And no, not a single person die. You airlift all of them out and you spread them across Europe, or I don't know, put them all in France.
Put them all in the Arizona desert. We make a new state of Israel in the Arizona desert.
Put them in do the new Asgard thing. You ship them all to in the Marvel comics, they have all of Asgard in one state in the US. Do that, but with Jews.
We just make the equivalent a Native American reservation, but a giant one in Montana.
Yeah.
And just call it Israel and put all the Israelis there.
Israel 2.
In the same sense, you're even supporting a state of Israel run by Jews, but it seems...
Well...
that seems to be anti-Zionist.
Well, hold on. Now that's equating the term state, because state in the American sense means province.
No, I mean, you literally give it sovereignty.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't mean
in which case yeah. Well, in that case, it wouldn't match Andrew's definition, but it would match one of or both of AP's definitions.
But it's still given that his arguments would fail then, right? You're not
Yeah.
preventing the
Oh, yeah.
caliphate in that
Yeah.
way. You're not giving like safety to Christians in that way. But you're still being a Zionist. So it's saying like supporting Zionism wouldn't even accomplish these things that he's motivated to. They're saying is motivatory to it. Which is why I think like the first condition he's saying isn't relevant. I think he just means the second condition, and it has to be in the Middle East. Like, or in like the ancestral homeland. I think Andrew's definition would have to be the one used, because it's the reestablishment of the state of Israel,
Well,
the Jewish homeland.
I believe that Theodor Herzl. Well, this is kind of a genetic fallacy in my program. Okay, that much. I believe Theodor Herzl, who was the originator of modern Zionism, also proposed Madagascar as a potential location. So, but modern Zionism seems to be really fixated on the state that's there now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
To read this
But-
again and again, open your own Bibles.
Sorry, what?
If you put it in Madagascar, we wouldn't be having any of these problems. We'd have new and unique, weirder problems. Because Madagascar's weird. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Are you saying Eddie Murphy would be trying to run away from New York to be an Israeli citizen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Eddie Murphy would convert.
Like, it does seem weird if, like, the concept he's referring to, why we should support it, would be these things where you can support that concept and not get any of those things. Like, it just seems like AP is arguing for something that's not his own definition of Zionism, which is... It is kind of annoying for that.
Open the Bible,
Yeah.
open Romans 9 through 11. Read it again. Saint Paul condemns their unbelief and still says that God loves them and still says that God has a plan for them. Even those who have rejected and who have fallen into disbelief and who were broken off, he says it is a mystery of God that he took the wild branches, the Gentiles, and put them into the tree, and he broke off the natural branches, which are the Jews, and just like that, he will bring them back in and add them back to the tree. This is precisely what Romans 11 says. The narrative here is that these Jews, not just Jews who follow a certain type of Judaism, not just Jews who follow this Judaism or who do this or who do that, he says Jews by flesh, my fellow Israelites. That's literally what he's saying. He's never talking about a distinction of religious belief among Jews. He says Jews by flesh. So when Andrew talks about how lots of these people are secular people, they don't even believe in Judaism, it doesn't matter. St. Paul talks about Jews by flesh. Do you want to contest that? I would not contest it, because that's what my Bible says. This is not Protestant reasoning. Sit down and look at the scripture. This is literally what it says.
Was there the, in the Orthodox Study Bible, was there the thing that showed it's not that specific kind of Jews by flesh because of the children of Isaac? That wouldn't be? Or am I misremembering?
Yeah, so this is 9/11, right?
Yeah, 9. He's referencing both books 9 and book 11. Both books 9 and book 11.
Okay. Well, chapter 9.
Yep.
9/11. Okay. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying not to make the joke. I'm not gonna do it. All right. Okay. So, particular verse 6 through 13. So 9/11's in there. But it is not the word of God that has taken no effect, for they are not all the children. They are not all Israel who are Israel, nor are they all children. Hold on, is this right?
Which book is, when are you referencing? 9, 6 through
9.
13? Yep.
Yeah.
Jewish
Well, hold on.
unbelief
9,
is
6 through
illuminated by
13.
Paul's description of a twofold Israel, one spiritual and the other physical. God is faithful to all Israel, but the issue is, who is the true child of Abraham? Is not Abraham's children of the flesh, his natural or biological offspring, who are his children? If this were the case, the children of Hagar and Keturah would be Israelites. Furthermore, not all those in Isaac's line are Israelites. Otherwise, Esau in Edomites would be Abraham's true children, are the children of the promise. That is those who are in Isaac, which means faithful believers, because Isaac was miraculously conceived through God's promise, which Abraham believed. It is those who continue in this faith who are Abraham's true offspring. If he's saying that this is like purely bloodline, purely of the flesh, this is just contradicting it. Or am I misunderstanding something?
So maybe he's citing the section before that.
I think he is, but this is still just contextualizing it, right?
Yeah, it would be. Because I tell the truth in Christ, I'm not lying. My conscience also bearing me witness in the whole. This isn't the commentary. I'm just reading the straight verse.
Yep.
That I have great sorrow and continual grief in my heart, for I could wish that I myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my countrymen, according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the service of God, and the promises, of whom are the fathers, and whom, according to the flesh, Christ came, who is over all, the eternally blessed God. Amen. So, see, now this is why I wish I spoke Koine Greek, right here, because when I see all these words together, and my political theory brain is like saying, "Oh, countrymen," that could mean like 20 different things. So yeah, countrymen according to the flesh, or Israelite. So it's clear that he's talking about blood relation here, and the commentary. St. Paul had many opponents who accused him of failing to love his fellow Israelites. So there are two obvious readings to me. The first one is Andrew, well, which is the reading which Andrew gives. Sorry, AP gives. Sorry about that. The other one is that Paul is saying here that maybe I'm trying to go the other way, because what AP is saying is all of the people with a blood relation would have to be the flesh Israel, which would necessarily have to include like the particular sections of the blood relation which the commentary says don't count. Like it would have to, but so it could be saying, Paul is saying, my blood relatives who are of the flesh and of thought. That could be what he's talking about. That maybe that's it.
But that would be like, just contradicting AP here.
Yes, I'm saying that these are two potential interpretations, maybe.
I just don't see how what AP can be saying can hold true within the Orthodox Study Bible. It seems like he's doing the prop reasoning he just said, like, he wasn't doing.
So there's a whole page in the Orthodox Study Bible with a lot of commentary on this topic. And for the record, the reason why me and Corinth are going with the Orthodox Study Bible is because it's cited verbatim by AP in this debate as like a good source. So this isn't just us pulling shit out of our ass.
I think AP was the one who referenced the Orthodox Study Bible as well.
Yes, he does.
Also, I'm using it because I know very little about Orthodox interpretation of Scripture.
I don't know enough, and I'm Orthodox, so.
I'm an atheist. I don't know enough to like say if he's doing prop parallel or not. So, just going.
We're great friends. We're friends in the personal sense and enemies in the proper Schmittian sense. Anyway.
Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Carl Schmidt. In the early chapter, so I might just want to read this whole page, just to try to understand. In the early chapters of Romans, Paul expounds on the gospel of God's righteousness for the salvation of those who believe in Christ, both Jews and Gentiles. In the middle chapters of the epistle, 9 to 11, he grapples with the perplexing theme of the Jews' unbelief in their own promised Messiah. The matter not only causes Paul great anguish, but also raises questions about God's faithfulness to Jewish people. And An accusation was circling in the first century that God had not kept his promise to Israel, that he had unjustly abandoned his chosen people in favor of the idol-worshipping Gentiles. Although many Jews believed in Christ, the majority of the Jewish people adhered to their old leaders and traditions. Meanwhile, an increasing number of Gentiles became Christians. How was one of these developments? How was one to view these developments? What was God's plan for the Jews and Gentiles in this decisive period of history of salvation? Why were most Jews unresponsive and opposed to? Yeah, so basically, what the fuck's going on? Paul's letter to the Romans indicates how important such questions were to Christians. So then it lists four parts. 1 through Paul, Romans 9, 1-3, God miraculously saved the Jewish zealot Saul, who later, as Paul the Apostle confesses, I am indeed a Jew. The faithfulness of God to Israel, to the Gentiles, is witness of the Holy Spirit. Though Paul, who is even willing to be accursed from Christ, if by that Israel could be saved. Okay. So, okay. God, 2, through providence. Okay, so this is how God is fulfilling the system. So it is fulfilling the promises. So we can therefore, okay. So it's saying here. Sorry, I'm trying to truncate this because this is long. Through providence, God's faith shows his sovereign care for both Israel and the Gentiles through bestowing on them his adoption, glory, covenants, law, and services. The gospel itself came to Jews first through the patriarchs, and then it goes to the history of the patriarchs. For the Christians, this birth comes through. So, fuck's sake, this doesn't clarify anything. So, what that the clarity is brought in the section regarding the question of whether or not God was fulfilling things for Israel, but what it doesn't clarify is whether or not the flesh Israel still has a unique connection to God. So, fuck's sake. I'm gonna probably just ask my priest about this, because now I'm really curious. Now I'm confused.
Okay, we will pick up this conversation after you talk to your priest. See you all next week.
Yep, we're yeah. I'm gonna ask my.
Okay. On a sillier note, if you really think about it, it's very likely Tarzan's first wet dream wasn't about a human. Okay.
I never said that supporting Jews or supporting Israel requires that we somehow acknowledge their theology as correct. This is ridiculous. This is absurd. It is fallacious. Nobody.
AP is just explicitly correct here. That's a big part of where Andrew fucked up in his first argument.
Is required
Not
to do
defining
that. What we would be in our right to do is to look at the Middle East. Another thing to address here, by the way, which I mentioned in my opening statement, Israel significantly treats Christians better than the other side does. Would you rather support the other side, or would you rather support the Jewish people? I would rather support those that my Bible describes as still beloved by God, and those who have a track record of actually protecting Christian people. Whereas all the other Muslim nations together have a history of oppressing them. And if they gain the power, and yes, if you don't support Israel, then you are supporting the other side. If they regain power, it will only lead to more oppression of your fellow Christians. This is not pragmatism. It is about caring for your fellow Christians. And
this is pragmatism. AP
This is a pragmatic way. Yeah, this is a pragmatic way of caring for your fellow what?
Like, he describes pragmatism and says it's not pragmatism. Like, it's fine to make, like, some pragmatic arguments, right? Like, this is the best way we can achieve faith and practice or something. This is something that we are able to do if we can't achieve the ideal. We can create, like, like, even fucking tax policies are always going to be, like, pragmatic arguments. Should Christians support, like, this given tax policy, if it achieves like some Christian goal, I mean it's a pragmatic case for it. But like,
Well, I mean,
it just can't be pure pragmatism. It has to be pragmatic to furthering an inherently Christian end. Given that like
maybe
the methods to achieve that pragmatic end also don't violate Christian ethics.
this is a pragmatic argument. Like it's just not a. It's a pragmatic way of achieving a Christian goal, basically.
Which like
I
you can
don't-
argue that this isn't achieving a Christian goal entirely. That's the entire topic of the debate.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
is this a Christian goal? But so AP is using a pragmatic argument here, and like that itself would be fine if he substantiated the other parts. It's just he doesn't.
Oh, and there's also a very clear false dichotomy here. He straight up says, "Do you support this side or that side?" And Andrew calls it out, which is a good call out and accurate. Although AP claims it's not a false dichotomy.
Let's not be silly here.
Caring for those that God says he still loves, not pragmatism. I'm not sure where you get pragmatism here. Andrew says that there's an alternative of Christians going and settling there. Please. Let's not be ridiculous.
I misquoted him. That was a paraphrase. I fucked it up, guys. Fucked up.
That would have been a very good setup. Imagine Corinth didn't fuck that up.
Imagine I remembered the quotes.
Imagine if he did. But
if I did
that
remember the
isn't-
quote, I would have said, "Let's not be ridiculous here."
I also don't believe that that's something.
What?
I think that's like, given current geopolitics, it's unlikely, but it's not unrealistic. Like,
Yeah.
the only real there's force in a bunch of different Christian nations and like Christian groups who would support this. Like, Christians do fucking crazy shit. Like, not specifically Orthodox. There is a so I used to be Pentecostal. Pentecostals do a lot with mission, and I mean a lot. At least my church did. One of the groups which they supported somewhat was called Live Dead, which is a group of Christian missionaries who go to literally the harshest parts of the world in order to spread the gospel from a obviously Pentecostal standpoint. It was, from what I could tell, fairly successful. Now, that's something which was not receiving state support, and that was opposed. You could very easily have something like that in like the Middle East, like to establish a state. But obviously you would have to have like international support for such a movement. But you could do that. That's reasonable. You would just have to do like you would have to convince an elite group to back you, but it's feasible. Christian elites exist.
You could even make the deal with Israel, right? Like, hey, we give full support to Israel, given you just allow these people to come in and be like missionaries with that. Like, we've seen people go to fucking North Sentinel Island and get killed because they wanted to preach the gospel there. It's really hard to believe they wouldn't go to fucking Israel to maybe go to like Gaza, preach some of that there, go to like Jerusalem, preach it to some Israeli Jews, go over to maybe like Jordan or Oman, to these areas, maybe preach it. Not Oman. Oman's pretty far away. What's the other country that's Syria? Like Syria, Jordan, those countries.
Well, you could also just have the USG say, "Hey, Israel, we're going to keep supporting you, but it's conditional now. The support is conditional on you having a Christian delegation in your parliament or something."
Yeah,
that's not unreasonable. I don't think. All you would have to do is get particular people in power in the USG.
Yeah, there are like a ton of these cases that we can do that. Bape just makes the argument for incredulity here. Let's not be ridiculous. Like,
yeah, which is a fallacy. Now that's a fun one for everybody to remember. Argument for incredulity.
Like, there's nothing inherently ridiculous about oh, Christians want to be missionaries. This state isn't a Christian state and could allow Christian missionaries. If they want Christian support, then they should allow Christian missionaries and protect Christian missionaries.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
not sure which
I
part
believe
he sees as
Kenneth
ridiculous.
Copeland. Well, Kenneth Copeland by himself could probably fund this. Like everything we're describing, just him by himself with his own money.
Yes, but he's also a demon.
Well, secondary problems, Corinth.
Okay.
That's an ancillary point.
Okay,
He
one
could
sec.
do it. That's
Very important. Like
There's no audio.
I don't care if there's audio. This is a lizard person. We don't need the audio. We just need to look at this.
well.
See.
Well,
Tell me this.
point taken. Point taken that he is a lizard person. All right.
Okay. All I'm saying, that might be the other Antichrist that we're working with at that point, undermining Andrew's argument 3.
Look, Corinth. I don't think you understand. Would you support the lizard people or the inevitable Islamic caliphate, which comes about if you don't support the lizard people?
That's a false dichotomy because there's only one choice, because the Islamic caliphate will also be run by lizard people.
That's a good point. I forgot that part. The fact that the Islamic caliphate wouldn't necessarily be ran by lizards.
It's not a false dichotomy because there's more than 2 choices. It's because there's not even 2 choices. There's only one
It's not a
choice.
dichotomy. It's a monocotomy.
Yes.
Or, I don't know. It's a cotomy.
Okay.
So that would be the least likely option. Finally, rebuilding of the temple and the Antichrist, the best polls put the number of people who want to reestablish the temple.
There's something about the statement there. The least likely option. Now, I'm a consequentialist. You know that. You know how I'm going to answer this question if I ask you it. But you're an Orthodox Christian. What would your Christian values have you, do? You have, a 99% chance of killing, 10 people, or a 100% chance of killing 1 person. And if you don't press either of the buttons, you have, a 0.0... Or, no, not 0.0. You have a 99.9% chance of killing 1 million people.
Well, I'm probably gonna end up pressing the button to kill 1 person.
Okay.
That seems like I obviously, especially after reading On Resistance to Evil by Force, it's like, okay, well, killing is just fine in some cases, and that would be one of those cases.
Mystery got to you. Andrew, I think, would disagree.
We did it for book club. You could have read it with us.
I tried to, okay? I was I can't do that's an Orthodox book, okay? That's one of the books.
Okay. No, the reason it was hard to read wasn't because it's Orthodox. Sorry.
No, I agree. It wasn't hard to read because of that.
Different
both hard to
story,
read and uncompelling to me.
Anyway,
it can be one of the two. Sorry.
This is on Resistance to Evil. The whole point of me bringing up that book is to say, from an Orthodox Christian perspective, assuming that book is accurate, which I believe it mostly is, it is killing in some cases can be justified, and I think that's a case where we're getting it's pretty justified.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna be right back. I want to go feed my cat quickly.
All right. Anyway, so this is a live stream, so the goal is to entertain all 7 watchers. Wow, all 7. All right. So this is an odd debate, as you've no doubt been able to tell, because both sides here don't appear to be making particularly good arguments. Despite both of them being well known in their relative spheres, which is kind of strange. At least our analysis is that 2 of Andrew's arguments failed to get off the ground, and all 3 of AP's arguments failed to get off the ground. Now, AP, in a later stream with David Wood, which I've referenced quite a few times, he claims that that these okay, he claims two things which appear to be a direct contradiction. He claims that one, he's not making a binary choice. That he's only appealing to what's practically possible, given the state of the world geopolitically. And he's also claiming that he's not making a pragmatic argument here regarding the Islamic Caliphate deal. Those two things both appear to be wrong on his model. Anyway, Corinth's back now. I can see his mouse moving, so
Sorry.
we're going to get back to this.
Hi.
At a maximum of 30%. Are you serious?
Oh, is that all? Thank you very much for that 5-minute
Oh,
rebuttal.
was that all?
We'll kick it over to Andrew for his 5-minute rebuttal as well.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a no-brainer. He didn't actually address my arguments.
Also, I just want to point out, Andrew at the end wanted specifically out his main argument was the fourth claim. That was the claim that AP just didn't address at all. The closest thing was just saying like only 30% of Israelis support that, which
well the deal with the 40%, sorry, the 30% claim, that's actually a non sequitur.
Yeah.
Like, this is my elitist brain coming in to shit on all of you people who believe in popular sovereignty for some reason. Like, a state doing an action isn't predicated necessarily on the population thinking that they should do the action. Like, if let's say Andrew's
insider
right
trading
here.
with the U.S. Congress.
Yes. Well, so
Most Americans
not even that.
are against like Congress members being able to trade stocks, right?
Well,
Like
so
overwhelmingly.
that wouldn't be an example of what I'm talking about, because that's not a state action.
I mean, the
That's
state
a,
action would be banning it, right? We're not going to be able to ban it despite the majority of people doing it. The state's not acting in a way that's in line with popular beliefs.
Yes, but the point, well, yeah, that sorry, that could be an example. The passing of the Pelosi Act, yes, that was what it was called, which was going to ban all members of Congress and all senators from owning stocks. That you could assume that could have 100% support. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to pass. Also, vice versa, you could have like 0% support for like a given thing in an omnibus spending bill, but that could still pass because it's sandwiched between a bunch of other shit, which people actually like. To say, oh, only 30% support, okay, that's irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant. 0% of Israelis could support it, and if they were still funding the action, then it would still go to Andrew's point. The actual amount of support that it gets based on the population is irrelevant. But this is what AP has been doing the entire debate. He's associating Zionism with the support for the physical human beings in the nation. Sorry, the physical human beings in the country, in the border, who have citizenship. He's not understanding Zionism as a support for a state. And for the record, no state has a right to exist because states are social constructs. You can I do not believe that the U.S. government, that the founders did something immoral when they abolished the Articles of Confederacy. If you take the stance that that states have a right to exist, then the U.S. framers were doing something deeply immoral by completely abolishing that system, because that state was gone. Nobody died, but the state ceased to exist, and then we were under the Constitution, which established a different state. But what always happens, sorry, I'm kind of ranting here, but what always happens in this particular debate is people want to associate the state with the people living under it, where that's completely a conflation. And that's what AP is doing consistently.
Yeah. Okay, we ready to keep going?
Yeah.
Notice that I put my arguments even in simple premise forms so that even you.
I need to redress this. Andrew, your arguments in premise forms were so fucking bad they didn't follow. Don't do this.
Yeah.
Could have addressed them.
Okay.
So it's very simple. He did not actually address why it is Christians have an ought to support a nation which he admits is attempting to create Antichrist. They're gonna name a false Messiah. Any Messiah that...
if I'm being as critical of Andrew as I've been of AP, he didn't admit they're trying to create an Antichrist. He just admitted there's some support for creating the Antichrist. Or for moving towards creating the Antichrist.
Yes, the particular claim he made was not the nation's moving towards creating Antichrist. It's, well, not even the nation, the state.
Yeah.
To be clear, I think that these terms get muddled. I think Andrew's talking about the state here.
Yeah.
But the claim he's not establishing. Yeah. He's not establishing that they're supporting the creation of Antichrist. He's establishing that they're supporting groups who are doing that. And even then, he didn't establish it that well.
I don't think AP even established that. I think he just established that there's a population supporting that group of
a specific subset of the nation.
It's like we've been fairly critical of like AP's like minutia, so I felt like it'd be fair to try and point it out here as well.
Well, yeah, if anything, we should be more critical of Andrew.
Yeah.
Nation names, by definition, has to be false under Christianity. By definition, that false Messiah also has to condemn Christians, right? Because how could he not if he's the Messiah? He'll have to say that Christ was not divine. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, Ridvan. So the thing is he also brings up multiple false dialectics, right? Again, false dialectic after false dialectic. First,
you might know this, is false dialectic like an actual term for a false dichotomy here?
He clearly is using the term false dichotomy. That's clearly what he means. I don't think it is.
Okay, because like I don't know why he's doing that. I don't know if like I just talk to too many Hegelians who use it like in a different way. So learnlogic.org, or sorry, learnlogic.online. The dialectic fallacy. The fallacy that all problems can be understood in terms of struggle between two tendencies: good, evil, light, dark, right, wrong, working class, ruling class, my religion, your religion, my politics, your politics. Okay,
a way of winding. Okay. Yeah, okay. So this would actually be an example according to Dr. David Fleming, who is not a logician. He's a cultural historian and economist.
Okay, I think he's wrong then. So he's just wrong. Andrew's also wrong here. Use the word false dichotomy instead of using false dialectic.
I was not saying that Ridvan takes the position that this is a secular state, but that even if he did, the argument wouldn't matter, right? So I'm doing an internal critique. I'm arguing both sides to still show I'm correct and you're not.
Andrew is wrong here. He explicitly stated in his opening, okay, so he stated two things. He stated if Ridvan makes the claim, and he stated that Ridvan is making the claim. You watching at home, you can go back and check. I'm not wrong on this. He says both of those things. So Ridvan was correct to call out Andrew for saying that Ridvan was saying that it was secular. Andrew is actually just wrong on this point.
I do think an implication of Ridvan's view, though, is that it's secular. And that's because of the biblical verses.
Yes, but my point is what Andrew's saying right now is wrong.
Yeah.
Like currently. He's saying something that's just completely false.
Yes. Also, I'm not sure if it would be like an internal critique at this point because he gave an external reason for that. I'm not sure what part of it was an internal critique there.
Not.
When I believe the internal critique is it can't be a. I think it's I think he's saying it's internal to orthodoxy. I don't know.
Okay.
And he dives into some of these other arguments. Let's go through them real quick.
We're like 2.5 hours in. We didn't even get to open dialogue yet. See? Holy shit.
Well, we're under 6 hours so far.
He says,
Let's just not go into questions afterwards.
God loves everybody. He wants
Debate's
Muslims
over
back in the
after
fold
that,
as
I
well.
think.
Okay, it's not just about bringing Jewish people back in the fold. It's about bringing everybody back into the fold. It's another false dialectic. The church is Israel. We're not talking about a specific bloodline people group. Okay, that's not what we're discussing. And that's when you're talking about St. Paul, and we can bring this up, especially when you're talking about the cutting off the limbs of the tree. Paul is specifically saying that he himself would give up everything if it meant that his people who rejected Christ would come back to Christ. I would love that. But Ridvan, they haven't. And the Temple Institute, which is there, and I need you to acknowledge this, Ridvan, is trying to name Antichrist. You said only 30% want to name. Is that all? 30%? This is just an insignificant number. 30%. And it's, by the way, he's also not telling you this, it's increasing. It's not decreasing, it's increasing. And they're getting more positions in government. And he knows they're getting more positions in government. How can we have a nuclear-armed nation that the United States and Christians in the United States is supporting who wants to name an Antichrist? Please answer that question, Ridvan. Please, pretty please. With sugar on top.
Also, one note.
I'm sorry. Go for it.
So this isn't a critique of the argument. Andrew said on a stream after this with Jim Bob that he believes that the number is higher than 30%. Apostate Prophet's source for this, he went over in his 6-hour-long stream with David Wood, is a source from the 90s. I don't know where Andrew is getting the claim that it's increasing. Anyway, that's all.
Also, just because we were more critical about this argument, I do think that this argument has the strongest rhetoric of his three positions. I do think that this invokes the strongest emotion of a Christian audience or something.
Yes.
But
yes,
that's from a non-Christian saying that, so that might not be compelling.
Top. Why ought I send my big American dollars, which I want to give to my kids for college and other things, to a nation that wants to name the antithesis, the antithetical, the entire opposite of Christianity, Antichrist? Need that answered. My primary argument for an ought not needs something better than, well, because geopolitically, if Israel is not there, bad things could happen. It's like, yeah, they could. Maybe they don't, though. That's a false dialectic. It's called a false binary. You keep presenting false choices. If A
you said
happens,
it right.
then
False
B
binary.
assuredly will happen. You don't know that. You have no idea if that's the case.
At
You're
least
just
the
making
word he's
that,
going with is a false D
kind of
word.
assertion, without even admitting either that it's fallacious argumentation.
He's really close to the right term.
Fallacy. It's a false binary fallacy. And with that, please, I'll yield the time right back over. I need an answer to this.
We'll actually be jumping into the.
Okay, that's the end of Andrew's statement. I do think he should have reharped on his other two arguments. I think that is a major fuck up on him. Just because this argument is I think we both agree probably is weakest if we take the stronger form as premise one.
Like I said, I think that this could be a really good argument if he merged it with the first argument and fixed the wording on the premises. But that didn't happen. So yeah.
It really does support his first argument.
Yes, but the argument doesn't seem to. Maybe I'm just not understanding it. But the argument doesn't seem to be that he's presenting here that we ought not support because they're attempting to bring about an antichrist. It seems like what he's saying is we ought not support because if we do support, they will bring about an antichrist at some point in the future. That's what it seems like he's saying, which is not accurate on a Christian framework necessarily, and not accurate a necessarily true thing in a geopolitical framework, because you could support like a false religion in Christianity, and that does not necessarily mean in Christianity that there will be an antichrist that comes out of that. Like that's not like a necessary thing. Now, you shouldn't support false religions. It's just that outcome isn't necessarily going to happen.
I mean,
but
is there anything in like Revelation that if the temple is restored or whatever, there will be antichrist or false messiah named?
So,
because like if that is the case, then you're at least moving towards that by supporting this.
So
which might be bad.
The answer is kinda not really. So now I have to shoot myself back into the past from when I was a dispensationalist. But I believe the particular reason why they want another temple built is to fulfill a prophecy which on the Orthodox view was already fulfilled in 70 AD, which is the abomination of desolation, which is a giving an offering to a pagan god in the Jewish temple, which already happened when the second temple prior to the second temple being destroyed in 70 AD. So on the dispensationalist framework, you have to rebuild the temple. So now you have a third temple, and then have the abomination of desolation happen, because on their view it hasn't occurred yet, or that was like a prefigurement or something. In the Orthodox view, I think I might be wrong on this. I'm not a theologian. All of this stuff already happened, so we don't have to reenact it. And in any case, even so, okay. To put it simply, to answer your question, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. But on the dispensationalist view, you absolutely have to. On dispensationalists are, I made up a new term for them. They're eschatological accelerationists. They want to end the world as fast as possible. That's why they support Israel.
That's such a funny term. What the fuck?
Yeah, eschatological accelerationism.
Oh my god. I do think there's like again, if we're using like the first argument in terms of like you just shouldn't be supporting things that are attempting to move towards Antichrist, or things that like support Antichrist things, then this still works. But that just falls into the prior statements of like it works as a support for P1 or ARG1, not P1. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see how open dialogue goes.
The crossfire
You know how this
section.
goes.
About 15
I do.
minutes. Sean from Uncensored, I should say Sean, the leader of Uncensored America, asked me to give you guys a long leash. So let it rip for 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Do you acknowledge, Andrew, that the Jews are actually in an extermination war for their survival right now?
Yeah, I would say that they're in a war for survival, sure.
Okay, so do you also acknowledge that if they don't have the support that they need,
Immediate fail.
The other side wants to exterminate them, which you just acknowledged, basically, and that they could be exterminated as a result?
Even if I were, let's just say, I'll just grant the whole thing. So I'll just grant for the sake of argument.
I mean, it also works as a critique of AP's argument if we want to be really charitable. AP using the caliphate is taking the slippery slope. If Andrew uses the slippery slope for Israel, it could lead to Antichrist, therefore bad as well. So if we're taking it like that, it leads to a push against AP's first position. The secondary case of we can send in missionaries defeats reason 2. And then the first condition, Andrew's first argument, would work against reason 3 for AP, and he'd just come out on top from that. Because his goal is to go like neutral. If he goes neutral, AP's affirmative claim of should support Zionism like just fails.
Well, Andrew isn't trying to go neutral here, which is another criticism. He's trying to go anti. But if he went like the same route that he did with I actually think his arguments against Misfit Patriot were much better than these.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Misfit Patriot is an idiot and Apostate Prophet is not an idiot. I
think the arguments here seem stronger, but their intention is to go towards a push. Like, yeah, it might be the case that you have some positive reason. I have some positive reason to not do that, though. What does that get us to? Well, we don't have an obligation either way at that point, maybe.
Yeah. One other thing. Now, this is, I guess, a style thing. Andrew likes to concede as much as he can get away with. Often he does this all the time, which is very funny because motto is one step back. When you actually analyze his debate style, he steps back a lot and then punches you in the face.
Not one step back. It's a lot of steps. We're running for the hills, buddy.
We're running backwards, grabbing a bazooka, and blasting your ass. That's actually Andrew's debate style.
Run backwards, take like
back.
a dolphin dive, and the Crucible audience just starts mag dumping.
Yeah, pretty much. But the point I'm trying to make here is he should have rejected the premise that Jews are in a because the claim was, are Jews in an extermination war for their survival? The answer is no, they're not. That claim could only be made for the Jews in Israel. It can't be made for the Jews in New Zealand. Well, I don't know, maybe some crazy shit's going on in New Zealand, but I doubt that. And certainly can't be made for Jews in America. So I would have rejected that straight out and make him clarify what he means by extermination war. And, put it in a specific geographic region. Like, I could... Sorry.
Yeah.
That's it.
That if the United States were to pull out support from Israel tomorrow, that the nation would be exterminated. Let's just grant it, right? As horrible as this is, nobody wants to see anything like this. That's still not an ought for why Christians have to support them, Ridvan. It's still not an ought claim. You're still not making the moral ought claim for why Christians have some moral duty to step in on behalf of a secular Zionist state that has religious components that wants to name Antichrist. Can we please get to that?
Do you acknowledge?
For how much Andrew does the philosophy arguments, he just needs to name the is-ought gap there. Like, it is the case.
Yeah.
If I grant you, it is the case that it gets destroyed if it pulls out. That doesn't get us to why it ought not be, why we ought do that or something.
Yeah.
You're still taking like that leap.
Misfit Patriot actually had a real, okay. Misfit Patriot had a good line here. If he wasn't such an idiot, he could have actually used it rather well. Which was, as a response to this, Christians ought to support people in need, Jews are people in need, therefore we ought to support the Jews. This doesn't get you to Zionism, but it gets you pretty close.
I think my argument for Christian Zionism is still the best one.
Lay it out so everybody can hear it publicly on an open platform.
Premise 1. Christians have an obligation to correct misconceptions about Christianity. Premise 2. There's a misconception about Christianity that it's hippie Jesus, everyone do as you please, like nonviolence pacifism. Premise 3. Supporting all the wars you can would clear up that misconception. Conclusion. Premise 4. Israel is engaging in a war. Conclusion. Christians should support Israel. Like, it's at least a reason, okay?
It's a valid argument.
It's a reason.
There are a number of reasons to reject it, but it's a valid argument.
I'm not saying it case outweighs. I'm just saying it's valid and sound.
A valid, non-sound.
Which of the premises do you disagree with?
Okay. Fuck's sake! Now, you were complaining about this taking too long, and now you're gonna make me go after this argument, this joke.
I'm not making it. I wasn't complaining about it taking too long. I was just making the joke. Hey, we said let's go under 6 hours. We spent 2 fucking hours getting out of the openers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll try to address this. Um. So, I would reject the Christians ought support all wars everywhere, as many wars as possible, because that's in opposition to Christian ethics. There are other things in Christian ethics that are more important than correcting misconception.
Okay. It still is a reason, though. It's the weaker claim of this is a reason for Christians to support Israel.
It is a reason.
Okay.
If Israel is destroyed and the Jews are eradicated in the region, this will lead to the reestablishment of the historical enemy of Christianity, which also led to the demise and destruction of Orthodox Christians in the East.
It could, but
It
also
will.
it could. Listen, I'll give you the logical acknowledgement. It could. Can you give me the logical acknowledgement that Western nations can also prevent this from happening, even if Israel's not there? Logically.
They can't, actually.
Logically, they
actually-
can't.
they actually
no,
can't.
no, Ridvan, listen. Not saying that it would be the case.
There would be an
Only that logically it could
There would
be
be
the
an
case.
extremely low likelihood. It's
Okay,
ridiculous
great,
to even
great.
talk
But
about it.
so it's
why
a
are we
false-
why are we talking about
then
it?
it's a false binary.
Is there a fantasy? Well, like, do you think
Bro,
that Christians would actually
what
go
you're
there and take
giving,
over?
if you grant that there's other possibilities, just with lower
they have
likelihood,
if they have the
then
capacity.
you're admitting you're engaging in the
Like,
fallacy of a
funding
false
and
binary.
So then let's do this.
That's it.
Let's do
Done.
this. If the Jews in the region are destroyed, do you think it is much more likely that the Muslims will take over, or do you think it's much more likely that the West will step in and somehow?
If the Jews in the region are destroyed, that's not something Andrew agrees will happen. He's not saying the Jews in the region should even be destroyed.
Also, he is weakening his previous statement that a caliphate would form.
Yeah.
Stop this.
Even
and do
if I,
something about it.
again, even if I grant the argument for likelihood, it's still a false binary because you have admitted that there's other options which also could be utilized
So
to
you have
prevent
just
this.
admitted that it is extremely likely in such a case that
Yeah.
that the Muslims will take over and reestablish a caliphate which is hell bent
Yeah.
on fighting and oppressing.
That's a Martin
When
Bailey.
the Jews are done, then the Christians are next.
So
there was a
I don't
saying in the
understand.
Middle East which
Do you
goes
think I support
first
Muslims?
the Sunday people, then
Ridvan?
first the Saturday people, then the Sunday
Ridvan,
people.
don't filibuster, Ridvan. Do you think I support Muslims?
You are supporting
Yeah,
them.
how?
You are supporting them
Okay.
by not supporting Israel. That's basically what you're doing.
Okay, then
Yes.
and so by not supporting Israel, I'm supporting Muslims, right?
Yes, yes.
Then by not supporting Muslims, you're supporting Antichrist. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense.
Does that make sense,
doesn't make
Ridvan?
any
No,
sense.
it doesn't make sense, Ridvan.
It doesn't make any
Because
sense.
it's a fallacious argument, Ridvan.
It doesn't make any
Also,
sense.
makes no
because,
sense.
Because what you're
I assume everybody watching caught the Martin Bailey there. Ridvan weakened his argument, got Andrew to agree with a weakened version, and then immediately flipped back to the stronger version. And that's actually a very good example of a Martin Bailey. I'm going to use that. I didn't notice that it was until watching this time on the stream. It was like, if Jews are eradicated, would Muslims take over? Yes. Okay, so you agree that it's much more likely that it's going to cause a caliphate. This is equating Muslims controlling a region with a caliphate. That's not what a caliphate is. A caliphate's like an Islamic empire, which is like an empire. Like the caliphates, like the Abbasid Caliphate, took over basically the entirety of the Middle East. The entirety of the Middle East, except for like the remains of the Byzantine Empire, including Iberia, as well as going as far east as Afghanistan. They were. It was a fucking empire. Like you look at a map and it's like, am I looking at a map of Rome? Or it's big. But to say, will Muslims take over? Yeah, it's likely that Muslims might take over. That doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean it's a caliphate.
But like even then it's so loaded in the first case. Like if the Jews are eradicated, this is something that's in contention in the first case. Will the Jews be eradicated if this is removed? Not inherently. They could survive, or we could just pull them out. We can even pull them out. They won't be eradicated. They're just somewhere else.
Yeah, put them all in France. Put them all in Wyoming.
I think that Montana could use however many Jews are in Israel.
Why are you fixated like particularly on Montana?
Because it's fucking empty.
not a bad reason, actually. That's actually well, no. North Dakota has like I think the lowest population. Well, no, the lowest population density is Alaska.
Yeah, but Alaska's too cold. They're desert Jews, not snow desert Jews. Like,
I'm gonna come out of here being the less anti-Semitic one, despite being the right winger.
I love Jews.
Well, I also love Jews anyway. Yeah,
We both love Jewish people.
Because what you're suggesting, you think that the existence of Israel itself would lead, because of certain plans, certain conspiracy theories, to the rise
What's
of
the
an
conspiracy
Antichrist.
theory? Let's go through
A
them.
planning of the Antichrist to come. Because of
What's
this,
the conspiracy
because of
theory?
this, you want to risk the people that God loves.
Yeah.
By the way, very, very big issue here.
Yeah.
I specifically said that the Jews are the only people, according to Paul himself, who are especially beloved by God.
So you're saying
For
that they
the
have
sake
magic
of,
Jew blood,
For the
Brendan?
sake of, yes. For the
Yes.
sake of, yes.
And do,
yes.
you think that the
For-
Orthodox Church supports
For the sake
that-
of their
You
ancestors.
think that the Orthodox Church believes that Jews have magic Jew blood, which puts
No.
them above Orthodox
No.
Christians?
No.
Then your point is moot.
Also, we went over the Orthodox Study Bible on this. It does seem to be the case. That's not magic Jew blood. It's some level of belief.
Yes, belief combined with heritage is what it seems like. So it wouldn't be just blood. But also the other deal. Ridvan claims, as well as David Wood, that Andrew is insulting the Bible here. He is not insulting the Bible. He is not insulting Ridvan. He's insulting the position by referring to it as magic Jew blood. But also, Ridvan agrees that magic Jew blood is accurate.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But also, Andrew, also on this point, David Wood and Apostate Prophet focused on this section a lot, the magic Jew blood thing, because Andrew does, coming up here, grossly misrepresent AP's position.
Yeah.
Which we will see.
What does Paul say? Does he say that they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers?
Well, yeah, but you're also...
What does that mean?
Hang
What
on,
does
hang
that
on,
mean?
hang on. But you're-
What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah.
For the sake of their
Ridvan,
forefathers.
I'll grant
What
it.
does that mean?
I'll grant it. You are also beloved for the sake of your forefathers.
No, the Jews
You
are
are also
especially
beloved for the sake of your
The-
forefathers. Because there's no magic Jew blood, Ridvan.
All right, let me read
There's
this.
no magic. It's not magic. It's not made out of magic. It's made out of the same thing as my blood and your blood.
Now let's read this. So
Let
Paul
us.
says that they are especially
Hang
beloved.
on. Before you divert,
Which verse is that? Especially beloved.
So the
Romans
especially beloved isn't there.
Or
Hold on.
beloved. Is
I
that
got my
Romans 11?
loved. I think it's 9. I'll check 9. You check 11.
Okay. Pretty sure it's 9.
So 9 is for I could wish I myself were cursed from Christ for my brethren, my countrymen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, who pertain to the adoption of the glory of the covenants given in law service. Da, 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 da. Okay, so there's nothing that specifically says about so it's 11. It has to be 11.
They're beloved for their father's
Yep.
sake. They're enemies for your sakes.
Yes.
But they're beloved for their father's sake. Again, this is the
Yeah.
fucking verse that doesn't have...
The word especially in there.
Well, that, but it's also the part that doesn't have the little annotation at the bottom. Which is really annoying.
This is the verse. The verse which doesn't have commentary.
There's like 2 verses in this entire chapter that don't have commentary.
And it's the ones he's citing.
11, 1 through 10, 11, 11 through 15, 16 through 22. 23 also doesn't have commentary. It's literally just those 3 verses that don't have commentary, and he's relying his argument on that. So fucking wild. Oh.
To be clear, I don't believe he's being dishonest by citing one without
Yes.
commentary. I just think it's really funny.
Yeah. I also don't believe he's being dishonest. It's just a crazy coincidence, dude.
Yeah.
Like, fuck. It's a really annoying coincidence, too, right? Like...
Yeah. Well, see. Oh, also, speaking of coincidences, he attempted to use clever rhetoric by calling it a conspiracy theory. Andrew tried to call him out on it. AP didn't bite. I can understand why AP wouldn't bite on that, because there's the risk of, if you're calling something a conspiracy theory, you say, what's the conspiracy theory? And then Andrew possibly could have come back with a bunch of sources. He didn't. I wish I saw that. I wish that happened, because that would have been very interesting.
Wait, where did that happen?
Go back 30 seconds.
But for the sake of their forefathers.
Well, yeah, but you're also.
What does that mean?
Oh,
What does
no,
that mean?
no,
What does that mean?
Yeah.
For the
I
sake
don't
of their
remember
forefathers.
exactly
I'll grant
What
it.
does that mean?
I'll grant it. You are also beloved
But
for the sake of
it was
your
his first
forefathers.
response.
The
You
Jews
are
are
also-
especially.
The Antichrist thing. It was Ridvan's first response. It was his go-to response for the Antichrist thing. There's some conspiracy theory, and Ridvan isn't clear on what that is. Andrew asks him. Ridvan doesn't clarify.
Okay. Was that before this, or?
Yeah, before this.
For the sake of your forefathers.
Do you want to go back to find it, or just keep going?
Keep going. I mean, you can just trust I'm not lying.
Because there's no magic Jew blood
I
written.
just don't know which
Alright,
part you're referencing.
There's no
so-
magic. It's not magic. It's not made out of magic. It's made out of the same thing as my blood and your blood.
Now let's read this. So
Let
Paul
us.
says that they are especially
Hang
beloved.
on. Before you.
Paul doesn't say they're especially beloved. That was which one?
I have it open.
It was Metropolitan Callisto Swear.
Yes, Callistos Ware references that. Paul doesn't use the term especially.
Divert.
That they
because we only have
have.
a few minutes.
What do you mean, Doug?
Hang on,
You
hang on,
never
hang on. I'll
addressed
dive
this
into
topic.
this.
You
but
never addressed this topic.
My main argument is about Antichrist.
Here is your main argument.
It's
Look at
about
this.
Antichrist, Ridvan.
Look at this.
Hang on,
He,
Ridvan.
he equates this.
Please,
he equates this to
please just
my
answer to the
forefathers.
argument.
Look at this.
I'm just gonna read
Saint
the
Paul
argument.
says, "For I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers,
Mm-hmm.
the kinsmen according to the flesh." He says magic blood. He's making fun of Paul here, actually.
Kinsman for the Flash.
Yeah, so now that's back to 9.
This feels like probably just jumping between them. Which part of 9 did he say that for?
It
was early 9,
that
right?
was, early 9. But to be fair, this the jumping back and forth is valid, because Andrew is trying to pin him on the Jew blood comment. Yeah, that's 1 through 5 is the section which he's referencing, but you get a lot of context when you read 6 through 13.
Yeah.
And you get a lot more with the commentaries.
And I think the commentaries are particularly valid here because they're both Orthodox. They're both coming from an Orthodox perspective. So using the Orthodox Study Bible's additional commentary is entirely valid.
Also because this is AP cites the Orthodox Study Bible specifically.
Yeah.
If Andrew did not support the Orthodox Study Bible, I would be shocked.
I also would be very shocked. Some belief eliminated Paul's. But yeah, like.
We went over this all before.
I'm not making fun of
They are
anybody.
commentary in
Israelites.
6
Sorry.
seems to come. Maybe.
Yep.
That's all.
By
Making fun of you,
flesh,
maybe.
this is what he's making fun of, this is not what I'm saying. And to them belong the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the worship, the promises, the patriarchs, the race according to the flesh is the Christ, who is God over all, blessed forever. Amen.
I guess when we get
Does
to the
anybody
point that
else fall into this
isn't
category?
just going to be appealing
Except
back
for
to the
me.
same
Yes,
view and over,
we
we'll stop.
No.
Are Israel. We're beloved of God. We
Andrew.
are the fulfillment of the promise,
Andrew,
Ridvan.
Paul talks
We are the
about
fulfillment of the promise.
Paul talks
Andrew
about
your
saying
own
this
faith.
was also went
Paul
over
talks about
in,
2 Israels. If you have an understanding of what he
Romans
talks
9,
about
6
here, you would see
through
this
13.
in the Orthodox Study Bible, which says
think-
that he's
I
talking
think
about
the line
two
of children of
Israels.
the
One is
promise, I don't know
natural
where you
Israel,
read
that.
one is the spiritual
But-
Israel.
Okay, are Jews above Orthodox
Doesn't
Christians?
matter.
Are they?
Doesn't matter.
Are they?
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Answer the question.
Doesn't matter.
What does it doesn't matter
Doesn't matter.
mean?
Do you
Are
acknowledge that
Jews above Orthodox
do
Christians?
you acknowledge that Christians
This guy
are
won't answer
especially
a question.
beloved?
Look, I need you to answer the question.
Massive optical
Are
out for
Jews
AP
above
here.
Orthodox Christians?
No.
Okay, no. Thank you.
Do you acknowledge
Thank
that
you.
Jews
That's
are
the end of the
especially
argument.
beloved?
That's done. It's done.
Okay, can you answer this question? Since
Okay.
I answered your question,
Uh-huh.
do you acknowledge
Finally.
that according to Paul, Jews are especially beloved because of their ancestry,
Yes,
above
but,
all people?
But Paul's also
Not
making
above
a
all people.
demonstration that.
Thank you.
I
yes,
would.
That's
thank
not
you.
stated
so Jews
anywhere
are
in the
especially
Bible.
beloved
But so
among
are
all
you,
the other
Ridvan.
nations.
AP, something really important. AP added context to the question as Andrew was answering. So the above all people should not be related to what Andrew answers. Because he had no way of understanding that to be the case, especially given that AP just acknowledged that they're not above Orthodox Christians.
Yes.
That would just be a contradiction at that point. And him adding that in there does seem very dishonest. Mostly because he admitted to the contrary of that.
You're
No.
especially.
Well, to be fair, they're both shouting at each other and talking over each other. It's probably not actually dishonest.
Maybe. I just don't see an honest answer when he just admits the contrary of that, though. Like, he admits, no, they're not above all people. Orthodox Christians are at least equal to them. Do you not admit St. Paul said that they are above all people? That is like the follow-up question. That does seem weird.
No.
Also especially
No.
beloved due to your ancestry.
Were my ancestors given the covenants? Were they given the
Bro,
law?
then,
Were they
so
given
then
the
they're
adoption
above
and glory?
Orthodox Christians?
No.
So what makes
No.
what makes Orthodox Christians then equal with the most beloved of God?
You're strawmanning
Ridvan?
it. You're strawmanning it. You don't understand the logic here.
I can't
I
wait to-
say
Is this like a valid... Do you think he's actually strawmanning here?
It can't be a straw man because it's a question.
Yeah, like...
Okay, word of advice to everybody listening. Straw man questions cannot be straw men because questions are not arguments. If I say, hey Corinth, do you like eating shit? That can't be a straw man. The reason it can't be a straw man is because Corinth can answer that however he fucking wants. I'm not presenting Corinth's argument.
Hey, Adam, do you enjoy beating your wife? Or when did you stop beating your wife? Like, these are also not straw men. They're just loaded questions.
Yes. I never stopped beating my wife, Corinth.
I also never stopped beating my wife.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm currently
Neither of us
beating
have
her.
ever.
Oh.
That's not what I meant.
Oh. I meant
I
I've been
never
beating her
started.
constantly since we've been married. Just
Oh, I
On
meant
fu-
I never began. So you can't stop something you've never started.
Oh, I meant I just never took a break. I never halted the beating. My arms are getting sore.
Even while we were having that one debate about whether or not ideologies and religions are distinct,
Yeah, I was just kicking her.
You-
She's like
you were
on the
beating your
ground
wife?
next to me, and I'm just kicking her knee.
man, I really hate consequentialists now.
That's the consequences for not trying the can opener off properly.
I say that Paul clearly says that they are especially beloved. Aside from those who are
Especially
who are,
meaning above
who are
others?
the spiritual Israel,
Does
the
that mean
Jews,
above others?
because
Paul
of
does
their
not say
ancestry,
that.
are especially beloved.
What does especially
you
beloved mean?
You want to basically deny what Paul
What
is
does
saying.
especially beloved mean?
They are especially beloved for
What
the
does
sake of
that
their
mean?
ancestors. That's
Does
that's
that
what
mean that
the
they're
word
loved more by God than you, Ridvan?
Wait, I have one thing I want to test. New International Version. NIV. Which verse?
That one.
Even the NIV doesn't have it say especially beloved. What the fuck?
That has to be the verse he's citing. Hold on. I'm gonna go to his sources and see, like and see if he has it in there. Like I don't know where he's getting the especially from. Because obviously that completely changes the meaning. Like, if you say they're beloved for the sake of their forefathers, according to the commentary on the relevant verse and the relevant book, the entire thing was written as a response to, partially in response, obviously a bunch of different, but partially in response to the claim that Paul wasn't loving the Jews, and that on Paul's view, they were not having the prophecies fulfilled. So he would have to be wrong.
The only one that
Yeah,
has
so
especially beloved is the Metropolitan Callistus,
Callistus.
where
Yeah.
even his own verse doesn't say that.
Yeah. So he's not citing Paul. He's citing Callistus Ware, who is in question because we have the Metropolitan Vitali article.
I know I
and-
probably shouldn't say it right now, but I'm so glad I made up the term orthokia right now for this.
I'm
saying AP is an Orthodox Inquirer or catechumen.
I'm holding my tongue.
He's lying about what St. Paul said. Yes, I'm being largely facetious. I need to get that out every now and again, okay?
Actually, if you want to think about it, in comparison to somebody who is not a Christian and who is not a Jewish, yes, they are beloved more by God.
Okay, so
That's
then what you're
literally what it
saying
says.
is that just by the fact that they have magic Jew blood, God loves them more than you.
Now you are making fun of the Bible.
No, that's not, listen, that's not biblical.
literally
and it's
making fun of
not
the
what's
Bible.
actually being said here.
That was misrepresenting his view in the question. So what you're saying is that was a straw man.
Yes.
Because he just said relative to non-Christians, whether or not it's like accurate or not.
Now, I'll
Yes.
step through all of this with you if you
Yes.
want, right? But that's not what's being
I
said.
cited to you
and
St.
what
John
you just
Chrysostom.
admitted is that you put Jewish people above Orthodox Christians because you think God loves them more.
St. John
I
Chrysostom,
explicitly said
Total
that they are-
insanity.
I explicitly said they are not above, and I explicitly just compared them to non-Christians. You heard that, right?
So
Everybody has
Paul-
heard that.
yeah.
Jews, in comparison to other non-Christians, are especially beloved to God. This is literally what Paul says. You might scoff about it as much
And
as
I
you
will-
want.
and I will contend with this as
I
soon as you
cited
stop
St. John
filibustering.
Chrysostom. I cited St. Augustine. I cited St. Cyril. I cited
hold
a
on.
recent
Hold on.
Orthodox.
So in this case, he must necessarily be talking about religious Jews and not ethnic Jews.
Yes.
Or maybe he's specifically, maybe he's trying to limit it to ethnic Jews who are not religious also. That might be what he's saying. Or no, okay. No.
Can I
The
go
most
back
charitable
really quick?
interpretation of this. Sorry?
Can I go back to re-listen quickly?
Yeah.
Christians because you think God loves them more.
No, I explicitly said
Total
that they are-
insanity.
I explicitly said they are not above, and I explicitly just compared them to non-Christians. You heard that, right?
So
Everybody has
Paul-
heard that.
yeah.
Jews, in comparison to other non-Christians, are especially beloved to God. This is literally what Paul says. You might scoff about it as much
And
as
I
you
will-
want.
and I will contend with this as
I
soon as you
cited
stop
St. John
filibustering.
Chrysostom. I cited St. Augustine. I cited St. Cyril. I cited a recent Orthodox.
Okay.
So yeah, the point I'm making is the analysis here is that AP is making must necessarily be limited to ethnic Jews who are not Christians, not religious Jews. Because when he's saying like that's the only way this position makes sense, because he can't be talking about Jewish converts.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't have the ancestry relevant here.
Even then, it's not even all ethnic Jews, right? When we go into the context around what St. Paul means by the Israelites of flesh.
Yes, yeah, because there are all sorts of different groups who were not like certain descendants. Like, well, hold on, I got it right here. Both Jacob and Esau were born of Isaac and Rebekah, yet only Jacob is considered the seed of Abraham. That's commentary on verses 9, 10 through 13. So it would not be referring to blood relatives who come from the line of Esau.
Yeah.
Despite them having the bloodline.
But again, like
Assuming AP knows what he's talking about.
like But again, this just doesn't go on to the current state of Israel, which is what he's defending.
Yes.
Which is like,
This is a non sequitur.
yeah, it's just, is it non sequitur or is it this red herring? Like, it's just completely unrelated information at this point.
At this point, it's a red herring. At this point, the hunting dog has been led off course, and the British hunters are going to put him down for being such a failure. That's where the term red herring comes from, by the way. Look it up. It's interesting.
The history of logical fallacies with Adam Dohl returns to you after this message from Apostate Prophet.
Hierarch, Metropolitan Callistus Ware.
Metropolitan Callistus
who
is
says the
never
very
going
same
to say
thing
that God
again.
loves a Jewish person because he's Jewish more than you.
Yes.
No, he won't.
Yes,
No,
that's,
he won't.
that's literally
no,
what he says.
won't. Nobody's ever going to say that.
That's not what he
ever.
says.
Here's the thing.
So here,
That's
let's.
not what-
Here's the thing, Andrew. If
Hold
you
on.
Can I
can't
go through
accept-
this with you?
If you can't,
I do not. So I've read through the article. I actually didn't realize how badly Apostate Prophet misrepresents the article. It does not say that in the article. The article doesn't say that God loves the Jews more than other non-Christians. That's not what he says. The particular line which he's referencing. So I can read the paragraph which he's referencing. That means in Paul's eyes, the Israels are still most emphatically the chosen people. And then you quote in Paul. I ask then, has God rejected his people? By no means. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. That's Romans 11, 1-2. In God's all-embracing plan, the people of Israel still a unique and distinctive vocation. They are especially beloved, quote unquote, by God, citing 11:29. For the gifts and call of God are irrevocable, 11:29, which is what is more, the Jewish people eventually turn to Christ. This will provide the enrichment to the total church, which lies far beyond their present imagining. Quoting Paul, if their failure means riches for the Gentiles, how much more would their full inclusion mean? To the Christian community as a whole, their conversion will be no less than life from the dead. So, know what he doesn't say. Now, maybe I'm just retarded and I'm misreading this rather short article, but Callistus Ware does not say that God loves Jews more than other non-Christians here. Now, Andrew doesn't get points for this at all because Andrew doesn't call this out. Well, actually, he does, but he doesn't cite the article. He doesn't do it in a convincing way, in my opinion. And I especially don't give him points for this because I knew Apostate Prophet was going to use this argument or something close to it because I knew Apostate Prophet was reading this article and I sent it to Andrew in advance. In short, I'm coping. That's it. Hello?
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Why did he do more for the Misfit Patriot one? It feels like this is the one that all the prep should have gone to.
I think you thought the prep would transfer. The prep did not.
Yeah. I mean, his opener used a different argument even. It's just
Yeah.
weird. Okay.
Bible says and what the hierarchs say.
Dude, you can't
What am I
filibuster
supposed to
the
do
entire
here?
debate. We
What
have to
am I
go through the
supposed to do here?
scripture. Do you want to go through it?
You never answered my question.
Okay, let's start with 11.
You never answered my arguments.
You haven't answered mine. My very
answered all
first
your
argument.
questions.
Here's my contention.
I answered all your questions. You
Okay,
never
so
answered
can
my
we talk about
questions.
Antichrist then?
What is there to talk
Okay,
about?
can I ask you to contend with my argument?
Yes.
Here's the argument. I literally put it in premise form
Let's
for
go
you.
through it again.
Okay, so
Yes, let's do that again.
yeah, it's very important that this actually gets
Very
answered,
important.
and I'm happy to go through the scripture with
You
you
didn't
too,
understand it
Rick.
the first time. Let's do it again. Okay.
Yeah, you never actually answered to it.
I answered it.
No, you didn't. Okay, so you agree that Zionists are attempting to name a false Messiah, that is a critical function of
Zionists, no.
Hang on,
I would
hang
say
on.
religious
Bro,
Jews,
bro,
yes,
let me
Zionists,
ask you.
no.
Can I even ask the question?
You just asked it. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
answered it.
I have to qualify it so that you understand what's being asked.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So, premise one, Christians should not support a false Messiah or an Antichrist. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Premise two, Zionists are attempting to name a Messiah.
No.
Okay. So then can you explain why the Zionist government gives money to the Temple Institute, who has a stated goal of naming a Messiah?
You are talking about Zionists as a general term. Zionists are all those who support the existence of Israel.
That would be the secular and the religious?
That would be the majority of the Israeli population.
No,
the majority
that's
of
not
Jews
what
around the
Zionism
world.
means.
That is literally what Zionism
No,
means.
what you said Zionism meant, and I'll give you your exact definition.
Yes,
It
go ahead.
meant an establishment of a Jewish state, and you agreed it couldn't be secular. It had to be
I never s-
religious
I
and
never
it had
said
to be
that.
secular.
I never said
So
that.
if the religious and the secular
never
are
said that.
both working towards a goal, then what is it?
I never said that.
Then what
You're
is
not-
it?
You're not paying attention to the detail.
Okay, I
here.
can't wait to hear it. Go ahead.
Establishing a Jewish state, a state for Jews
Yeah.
in the land of Israel.
Great.
The same thing is
All
wanted
Jews.
by conservative
Okay.
Jews, by
All
Orthodox
Jews?
Jews, by atheist
Is
Jews.
it all
even.
Jews?
All Jews want this. Okay,
Is
all
it-
Jews
so-
want this.
so all?
It does not require it to be completely in alignment with certain aspects of Orthodox Jewish theology.
Got it. Totally agree. So we've established
So
it.
when you say Zionists
So, yeah,
want this,
yeah,
then you are
yeah, I am,
overgeneralizing.
because
which
when you
doesn't
say
make sense.
all, that necessarily includes who has a right to return, religious Jews as well. And if the secular Jews are funding with money the religious Jews towards X goal, that would be all Jews doing
Andrew,
this.
The
Yeah?
logic here, the logic in question is that you are saying that that basically.
I do think that Andrew won on that point
Yeah.
because the particular thing is state is doing this, state is religious, secular Jews are funding the state, so secular Jews are funding the thing.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm AP in this situation. I'm going to demand sources that they're actually funding the Temple Institute. That's what I'm doing. AP isn't doing that. I don't know why.
It's. I don't. Maybe he's. Yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't. I honestly can't think of a reason. Even he just granted a number of like the amount that would be supporting it earlier, which just lends credence to it too. I don't know why he's giving Andrew numbers rather than contending with it. That was just like a.
Well, he's a fact nut.
Yeah, he just was too nutty for the facts. A little too much.
Yeah.
To his own detriment.
He's too much of a fact nut to debate this in the way that Andrew wants to. I'm going to make that catch on. The opposite of a Phil bro is a fact nut.
You could make the
I will
same
be
argument
using it.
that all Christians want to establish an apocalyptic Israel in the middle.
How?
Why? Because
Tell me the argument.
Why? Because Protestants are Christians and they believe in an eschatology that includes the reestablishment of Israel. You're not making a nuanced,
And is
a nuanced
the federal
distinction.
government funding these Protestants
You're
and
make-
bringing about
you
this
are,
Armageddon?
You're failing to make a nuanced distinction between certain
No,
people
I'm making the
within
nuanced
groups.
distinction. Let me respond.
AP just made an entire non sequitur. He said we can show that all Christians are doing this because Protestants are doing this, with the disconnect being
so-
that the Orthodox and the Catholics aren't supporting the Protestants in this endeavor.
Well, hold on. What AP said there is stupid, but I disagree. It's for the reason that you said, Corey. So
I mean, I think my reason's also true.
Well, what AP is saying here, AP thinks that Andrew's argument is because some Zionists are doing this, then we could say that Zionists are doing this. And AP thinks that Zionist means every single individual Jew, and that in order to support it, they have to believe that it should happen. When what Andrew's saying is every single Zionist is doing this because every single Zionist supports the state of Israel, and the state of Israel is doing it. AP is, again, conflating the state of Israel with the nation or the individuals which are underneath the state of Israel. In other words, he's appealing to popular sovereignty, which I hate.
Yeah, I agree it's stupid for that reason. I also think even if we just grant that would have been Andrew's argument, it wouldn't be. AP still wouldn't have like met the criteria. Or maybe it would if it was Andrew's argument, so.
Yeah, well,
Bam.
it's the important thing to note is Andrew isn't arguing that because a majority of Jews support it, we shouldn't support Jews. Which is, if I was just going off of Andrew's first argument, just off of what it said, I would think that that's what he was saying because he fucked up on the first argument, the way that he worded it. But clearly here is talking about the state. and AP is providing a false analogy due to his misunderstanding.
Yeah.
On. Is the United States federal government funding these groups, these free groups?
They're funding
who are
any group in
moving
Israel.
towards dispensationalism.
All right,
Hang
let
on.
me ask you this question
Ridvan,
then.
can I ask it before you answer it?
Sure.
Okay, great. So is the United States government funding Protestants to usher in Armageddon?
I have no idea. Are
You
they?
have no idea?
Are they?
Yeah, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But is it the case
wonderful.
that Zionists are indeed funding the?
Andrew's technically wrong on this. The United States government is funding Israel, which is funding the thing that's gonna.
Yes.
So
Yes.
technically, Andrew
yeah.
defeats his own argument here, but AP doesn't catch it.
Also, I'm confident that if you were to look into like the USAID files which have been released, you will find that the US government has supported at least one dispensationalist group that has a charity, which would be pretty close.
Yeah.
I don't have a specific example, but I'd bet money that they've done that.
I would not bet money against that.
Yeah, because it would end in me taking your money.
Yeah,
and giving
and
it
I don't want that.
to non-Israeli causes, non-Zionist causes.
I don't want to give my money to any cause. I just want to give my money to myself. I would
Well,
like
that's
a
a
little
cause.
Scrooge. The cause is I want my little Scrooge McDuck like gold coin pool, except it's like pennies in my bathtub.
Temple Institute, who does
Scrooge
want
on a
to
budget.
Antichrist?
Some Zionists, yes, not all Zionists. Not most Zionists.
Would you like to go through what the state of Israel gives the Temple Institute,
Okay.
or are you denying that they give them money?
No, of course you're giving them money.
Okay, great.
But
So
here,
then they're
here's my
funding
question to you.
Okay,
Here's my
never
question to
mind.
You say Zion.
Massive L for Ridvan.
I
Would you like to go through what the state of Israel gives the Temple Institute,
Okay.
or are you denying that they give them money?
No, of course you're giving them money.
Okay, great. So
oh my god, that might be the worst thing he could grant. Just like, yeah, let's go over it, because if you do that, you can like try and minimize it even. Like, it might be the case they give him like billions a year, but you can. It's likely not the case. It's likely not that much.
Yeah. This is a bad argument that's being made very convincingly by Andrew. AP is completely failing to address it.
Yeah, this is. Debate's a leveling game. Sometimes you gotta know a bad argument might be more effective because the other person just doesn't know how to do it. It's like scholars mate in chess. Like, if you're a fucking 100 elo player, like, don't learn the fucking Berlin. Don't learn fucking mainline Sicilian. Just play scholars mate. I don't care if you're black. Just punch the person, flip the board, and just still play scholars mate. Like, you're gonna win like that. Like, fuck.
they're
Here's my
funding
question to you. Here's
anti-Semitism.
my question to you. You say Zionists.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you saying something?
I was just going to explain scholars, mate. Whatever. Look it up if you don't know what it is.
Yes.
Do secular Jews who are also Zionists generally agree with the rebuilding of the Third Temple?
Well, if it is the case,
Do they?
That secular
do they
Jews
agree,
are funding
Do
it,
they
then
agree
yes.
with the building of the Third Temple?
maybe not.
Not okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
sure.
So when you say Zionists, then you are overgeneralizing and making a mistake. And
I'm
thereby
not, because
lying by
Zionism
omission.
includes all Jews.
No.
It doesn't?
We just established that secular Jews.
Andrew just did the equivocation.
Oh, Zionists include all Jews.
I'm
What Andrew is trying to say, that when he says all Jews, what he's trying to say is, at least I think, religious and secular.
and like
I don't
Zionists
think he's
as
saying
like the
literally
state of
all.
Israel is using both of those categories. Yeah. It's still really
Well-
imprecise wording by him.
Yeah. Well, look, I've said this before. My number one criticism of Andrew is that he uses words loosely. This has always been my number one criticism. Generally, it doesn't come into play, but in some cases it does, and it makes him look really stupid. But yeah,
Wait, what?
that's just. Well, my number one criticism of Andrew has always been that he uses words imprecisely often.
Yeah.
And this is one of those cases.
I
AP doesn't really take advantage of it.
says it's so annoying, especially to me, because of how much I've debated Andrew. Whenever he's talking to me, he's on his like best behavior. He's using words as precisely as he can. Like, and I watch him debate other people, and I'm like, I want to beat you up and take your lunch money. How do you let him say things like this and get away with it? It's so annoying.
Well, Andrew has said on stream, the bigger you get, the fewer good debate partners you find.
He also said on stream that if there of the list of lefties that he would want to debate with, I was one of them.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which
you are the list of lefty I would want to debate with, other than maybe Animated Effigy. Maybe. He's not an idiot.
It was me, Synth, and Destiny. Two people with like no followers in Destiny. Like
I bet he'd debate with Bunk. Maybe.
Yeah, but they were the people listed, was us three.
Well, yeah. Anyway.
But yeah.
Towards the building of the
So is there secular Zionism and other types of Zionism?
Yes, there is Zionism in general.
So
because
then are we
Zionism
going to
doesn't
have to
depend on
go?
religion.
So then
Zionism
can we
doesn't
maybe
depend on
go with a
religion.
definition like Zionism means that Jews want to reestablish a homeland and they're calling this homeland Israel and they want to protect it? Can we like go with that definition?
Andrew,
Israel.
did you not listen to me?
Yeah.
Are you not listening? I said it right here, Andrew. Do you want me to read this again, Andrew?
Yes.
Do you want me to read this
Yeah,
again?
read it again.
That's actually really good. This posture and rhetoric right now is really good. As like a counter to AP doing the fucking talking quieter, trying to like mockingly do it, and Andrew just looks even more like he's mocking him. I think this
Both
is like,
being smug at each other.
yeah, but Andrew's coming off a lot like smug better. Ridvin's like he's doing the smug and Ridvin, you look stupid. Ridvin's doing the smug and I look stupid for doing it.
Zionism alone simply means the establishment and protection of a land, a country, a state where Jews can live freely.
Yeah.
A Jewish state in what is now
Perfect.
known as Israel.
We're there.
Does this
We've
mean
got
that
it.
it has to be a
We've got
Jewish
it.
religious
So then-
state?
So wait,
Have you not listened
so
to
wait,
this?
we've got it. So then this would apply to secular Jews and religious Jews.
Yes. So,
So then if it's
Therefore,
secular
all
Jews,
Jews support
if it's
the third
secular
temple,
Jews
very good.
supporting religious Jews by giving them money, right? By giving them money so that they can establish Antichrist, then that would be Zionists doing it, right?
so because
Logic, Ridvin.
because
Logic,
some, because
Ridvin.
some Zionists support a certain religious movement that most Zionists, by the way,
At
do
this
not
point,
support.
I don't know
Great.
if
We
AP's
are
being
therefore to
dishonest or not.
conclude that all Zionists, by definition, support the rebuilding of the third temple.
Is
That
it,
doesn't make any
hang on,
sense.
is it increased?
That's-
It doesn't make any sense. What I
that's-
say his main
that's-
argument would be, it
that's a
doesn't make any sense.
non-secular.
It makes total sense, and I'll explain it.
I say it doesn't
Should
make any
I,
sense
as
because
a
you're not making any
Christian,
sense.
should I, as a Christian, send my support over to a country where 30% of them want to introduce Antichrist?
Yes.
Okay.
Why not?
I don't know where else to go with that.
Why
I
not?
don't know where else to go with.
Now, I have a question to you, Andrew.
Where else do I go?
Hold on.
with
I have a
that?
Hold
question
on.
to you, Andrew.
Andrew acts like that's a dunk. That is not a dunk.
Yeah.
Because the 30% figure does not matter at all. What he should have said, and this would have gotten across what he meant, but didn't say. Should I support a state, should I support a state which is trying to bring about Antichrist? That's what. If he said that, then it would have been a dunk. But the 30% figure doesn't actually matter at all. But yeah. This is, I've said it before, Andrew appeals to popular sovereignty, and it makes me want to do bad things to people. It makes me want to go back in time and kill John Locke. But I'm an Orthodox, not a Protestant, so I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, if we convert to Protestantism, you can predict the next person who's going to do this, and then, as long as they're within like 38 years, and then you can prevent their birth. I'm sure at least one
Or at
person's
the-
birth you can prevent.
Or at the very least, warn people of it occurring beforehand using a news article.
Yes.
Because we've established that Prots can do this now.
Exactly 38 years.
Exactly 38 years.
Maybe more.
I wish
38 years is the minimum.
I wish I was born exactly 38 years before Hitler. Sorry, no, that doesn't make sense. I wish I was a news reporter. 38 years before Hitler
When
was
St.
born.
Paul says that they are still
Holy
beloved and
shit.
that God still has a plan to reconcile them and to graft them back into the tree, do you think that he's talking about all the good Jews, or is he just talking about?
He's
you know,
talking about what happens when they finally bend their knee to Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now is my follow-up question, Andrew. Now is my follow-up question. If you allow the enemies of both Christians and Jews to try and eradicate them, do you think that you will do God and Paul and the Bible a service here?
I'm sorry. If you think that Jews have magic Jew blood and are therefore the most beloved of God, isn't it the case that even if we didn't support Israel, God would love them so much that he would never let
This
their
is a
enemies
really
stand
bad
down?
argument.
If a robber comes into your home,
Yeah.
you could just leave it up to God to handle it. You
Yeah.
don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
That doesn't
AP
make any
addresses it very well.
sense.
Well, I don't
you
know.
are still supposed
Does it
to
sound like
fulfill
you're the
your
most
obligations.
beloved? Does it sound like you're the most beloved?
You are still supposed to fulfill your obligations.
Okay,
and do
and
what's morally
why
right.
is my obligation
Morally right.
Great. Let's talk about what is morally right, an ought. Why, again, give me a moral paradigm.
I mean, Andrew could try and salvage that. Hey, because Christians are the most beloved by God, we are given the means to protect ourselves. I have the duty to protect my family because I have the means to protect my family because I am beloved. I don't go and wait for someone else to come in and kill the robber for me. That's like a potential out Andrew can use here, but I do think he's right in just trying to move off it.
Yeah. That was a very bad spur of the moment argument.
Yeah.
From a moral paradigm. Andrew, Christians, even though you agreed with me on premise one, should not support any type of false messiah, should not support the naming of any type of false messiah. Andrew, you and your government need to send tons of money to a nation.
This is the issue still, as we pointed out before. It's not the naming of false messiah he has to argue. The moving towards the naming of the false messiah is what he has to argue for, which I still think
Yes.
AP would just agree with, but at this point,
30%
we're
of it
both
by your own
kind of
admission. I think it's higher and growing.
overly
by the way.
pedantic.
But I'll just grant 30% wants to name false messiah. Ridvan, can you please, in a very concise way, tell me why it is that I need to send my support and my money to a nation which is funding that endeavor?
Yes, very simply.
Yeah.
Very, very simply.
Q&A.
Because the Jews were always expecting a Messiah. Even at the time of St. Paul, they were expecting a Messiah. And when St. Paul talked about how he still has love for them and how God still loves them and how God will naturally graft them in, and even when all the saints that I just mentioned talked about how Jews are expecting a Messiah and the Christ will come and reconcile them, they clearly did talk about all Jews who are still expecting a false Messiah. Therefore, you should support them.
Okay, wait a second.
We're
Wait a
done.
second.
We're done.
Who said
We're
that
done.
we shouldn't
We're
love
done.
Jews for being
We're
Jewish?
done.
It's fine. We
We're
can
done.
love Muslims and
We're done.
Jews and atheists and
We're done.
everybody.
You're finished.
But that was a
We are
ridiculous
done.
answer, though.
We are
Let me-
done.
Oh,
You're
We
finished.
give you a chance to respond. We do have to go to
Such
the
a
Q&A.
ridiculous
We're
answer.
done.
Folks, the
You're
way
finished.
it's going to work for the
We're
Q&A
done.
is if
It's
you
over,
come
Skippy.
up the middle
It's over.
and stand right in front of me.
Also
we'll actually
bad
give you
rhetoric,
a chance
Ridvan.
Yeah.
to give a couple of follow-up responses if you'd like, as long as they're
I think it's
short
pretty
and
obvious why it looks bad on
I
to you, the viewer at home.
I think we haven't even touched AP's rhetoric very often because we just don't expect him to have good rhetoric. We've been doing a lot more rhetorical breakdown for Andrew because both of us having spent a lot of time around Andrew. It's been we expect more of him.
pithy. Also, hold the mic just in case. Things
Also,
get weird.
we should do
Okay,
at least this
ready.
first question.
Please come up with your questions, and then if you can put your toes right here.
Okay. I mean, we can do questions if you
Because-
want to do questions.
Well, no, at least this first one,
I was just going to ask Andrew for
because of what it
The
is.
cope is painful, Ridvan.
This was right.
Well, the question was, what's your answer to Ridvan's previous statement?
The cope
And-
is painful.
Hello.
I've fucking seen
I
that
was
guy
just gonna
before.
ask Andrew his
Yeah.
response for what he just said.
Yeah. So
I think I
it's
saw
super
him at
simple. Saying that we need to love
Debate
everybody,
Con 5.
right? Regardless
Yeah,
of
yeah, I did too.
the heinous things that they might have even engaged in. Nobody said that you, as a Christian, are not you're not obligated to have love for people who are Jewish and Muslim and everything else. That doesn't provide an ought for why Christians have to support Zionism, though. It literally doesn't. He gave a descriptor instead. He said, descriptively, this is the case. You can't get an ought from an is. Giving me a descriptor doesn't address the ought that Christians should do anything.
It's never about loving them, Andrew. It's about supporting those
I know,
people
it's
that
about
are
them
beloved.
being extra loved.
And by the way, we'll allow you guys
Actually
rebuttals
is.
throughout if you'd like.
Yeah.
I just have a curious question on AP's
All right,
position on the Jews of Israel.
Want to stop here?
Unless you want to keep going, like, Andrew Wilson. Some of Andrew's worst points are in the Q&A. Like when he repeatedly goes after AP, he repeatedly strawmans AP, quite a few times, by saying that AP believes that Jews are more beloved than Orthodox Christians, which AP explicitly rejects multiple times and has rejected multiple times.
I don't know. I'm just not. I don't care about the audience questions as like a part of a debate.
Alright.
Like we're doing AP versus Andrew Wilson, not AP versus Andrew Wilson and the audience, or whatever.
And also American Nacho.
Yeah.
Shout out to American Nacho.
Shout out to where is it?
Who are you looking
In the
for?
land of Israel.
Nachos,
If the
like,
land of
right
Israel
here.
would be destroyed, a significant part of away from the fact
Yeah,
that
Shout out to my man American Nacho.
the world.
Was he's calling?
There is one
No.
question that you and I need to
Make
go
her-
over.
Okay.
I want to go to the next
Oh, the other
question. I want to go to
non-Christians.
the next question just because.
Okay. Just real quick. I see that you have your references there. Both of you guys have made. Oops, sorry. Got to eat it. Both of you guys have made quite a few claims.
Yeah.
Both sides, and some of them got to be fraudulent because, of course, they contradict each other. So I see references from you. I don't see a single reference from you. All I hear are your claims.
The most explicit example of him referencing something that someone else said, or that's like empirical claim, is when he referenced the woman from Penn State in his opener. The rest
Yes,
of it is
and it
literally
wasn't-
just. Sorry.
Yeah, it's very clear that he has referenced, like, some of the sources aren't super obvious. Like he cited the CIA, which but overall, yeah, they both cited things. The especially beloved line, the source for that is Callistos Ware, but he claims that Paul is saying it when in fact he's referencing Callistos Ware's commentary on Paul, which in and of itself is not authoritative. That's where he gets the claim that that's where he gets the above all other non-Christians claim, but that's not even stated in the source. Yeah. So both people are doing so on sources. AP is doing better, but the things that AP is citing is not relevant to the debate.
And AP,
for the most part,
AP also makes a lot more claims of what other people say, or like empirical claims, than Andrew is.
Yes.
And this is like,
yes,
if Andrew's making the claim, should Christians support heresies? That seems uncontendable. That just seems trivial to be the case. Like, no.
I mean, it would look, I will say, it would look much better if for like any given claim about Christian doctrine, he had like a source on hand. Like,
yeah.
Should Christians support heresy? And then like real quick, list off like a line from St. John Chrysostom or something like that. He doesn't do that. That's a flaw, I think, in Andrew's style, which is generally, well, like I said, Phil bro. He doesn't deal with facts to the same degree.
Also,
but
just to be the thing, with AP's sources, he didn't give a source that showed that it would be a caliphate. He gave sources about what people said, them, someone from Hamas wanting to be a caliphate, but those sources don't substantiate the claim. To protect Christians, he didn't give sources that substantiate the claim. I can go with the open world. We're gonna go into open world US in a minute just to show some of the silly implications of using this as a source, because he did reference this. And the sources for Romans just didn't. They supported something that just didn't lead to the conclusion. Like, if Andrew was just citing, like, well, this is how a toaster functions, and cites, like, Thomas Edison or something on electricity, that doesn't seem like a relevancy. It's like, sources only matter insofar as they further the point, and the point furthers the argument.
Yeah. But
like, Andrew should have,
given
like,
all of...
sorry, one last thing. Andrew should have sourced, like, more explicitly, because this was a CIA thing, of Israel having nukes, of Kufi getting funded by Israel. But, like, outside
all
of
of
that,
those
it wasn't.
things, yeah, all of those things, it would have been much better if Andrew had cited them. AP definitely did a better job at citing things, but most of the citations were irrelevant. Not all of them. I think he was prepared for a different kind of debate.
Yeah. This kind of, like, behavior just really annoys me, like, source bro mentality. It's like, what do you want this source on?
It's the fact nut mindset. You know, you have the Phil bro mindset where everything has to be completely logically valid under a certain framework, and then you have the fact nut mindset that if there isn't 5 sources, it's completely invalid.
Yeah.
These two have been locked in mortal combat on the internet for decades now, or like a decade.
Okay. The one thing that I wanted to go on that was really funny, and I think is the funniest line that Andrew could have made. In a war between Mexico and Turkey, Christian state of Mexico, 96% Christians, or 95.5 technically, versus Turkey, 0.2% Christians, majority Islam. It will be safer for Turkey to win. We should start funding Turkey's invasion of Mexico right now as Christians. We should support them taking over Israel. Or not Israel. We should support them taking over Mexico and not Colombia, but Nicaragua. This, by the way, is the source he used to show Israel is not repressing Christians. Actually, it's not in the top 50. If Jordan, one of the Middle Eastern countries, wanted to take over Mexico, Christians should support it because they would limit persecution.
Yeah.
Like,
this is maximizing the well-being of Christians by supporting Jordan in this hypothetical war. What would this war look like? I don't fucking know. But the point still stands.
3 of the countries very close to Israel are better for Christians than Mexico is. It doesn't seem like most people look at Mexico and say, Christians are suffering right there.
But according to this source, they are.
Yeah.
So, you know. Sorry. Now I actually want to look into this source because that is a really funny line, like a really funny line. And as you pointed out to me the other day, funny arguments win.
As you found out the other day.
As I found out. Shout out to Samuel Lloyd, my boy Samuel Lloyd. Look him up. Samuel Lloyd. Anyway, that's all on that. Samuel Lloyd.
Yeah, I think after, like, audience questions started, it just got so lost into the weeds.
Yeah.
Like,
But I don't want to be accused if, like, somebody who's a really big fan of AP watches this. I don't want to be accused of giving Andrew credit where it's not due. Andrew grossly misrepresents AP's view repeatedly after being corrected multiple times during the Q&A section.
yes, that is
multiple times. He strawmans AP. I actually can't think of a different way to put it than Andrew strawmanning AP.
When he goes with Magic True Blood, I don't know if we can say it's not a strawman because AP also affirms it. AP just affirms the contradiction. He affirms and the negation of it.
Well, the part which is which is problematic, is when Andrew says that AP believes that Jews are above Orthodox Christians, which AP explicitly rejects, but Andrew says it multiple times in the Q&A.
Over to a country.
AP also like explicitly said
Country
yes
where
to this,
30%
or was implying yes when he was saying they're especially beloved. He then like later corrects it to like above non-Christians, but
Is the
Yes.
I'm not
United
sure if he
Kingdom
actually holds
goal,
that.
that would be all
That's strange.
Jews doing
Andrew,
this.
the
Yeah?
logic here, the
Well,
logic
he
in
also
question-
never clarifies what that means.
Yeah.
Like, this is important because he's getting that line from a Callistos Ware article, but the Callistos Ware article doesn't. Callistos Ware doesn't clarify what exactly that means, and Callistos Ware does not say, in that article at least, that Jews are loved above non-Christians. Sorry, yeah, above other non-Christian groups.
I do think if we went through Q&A, we would reach the 6-hour mark, to be fair, so
Yeah.
we
Well,
are
we're-
3.5 hours
we're
into
getting
this
there.
right
Yeah,
now.
we're getting there.
I think that's probably good enough, right? We got through the main part of
Yeah.
Andrew and AP. Obviously, we can like break down whether Andrew and AP can do better in like Q&As, but that's a lot less interesting because you can't really prep for Q&As.
No, you can't. The thing I'd say is all of Andrew's worst points are during the Q&A section, and him misrepresenting AP is really big and in your face. The fact that all of AP's arguments are stupid isn't immediately obvious, kind of because of how he presents it.
Yeah.
I think that optically this could go either way in terms of saying who won and who lost, and that is sort of how the internet has viewed it, the people who watch this debate. But on strength of argument, I genuinely think Andrew has the better argument here because he has one valid argument. The other two are not good. They're not good.
I mean, if we break it down into the 3 reasons AP gave and then Andrew's 3 arguments, to prevent a caliphate is the same slippery slope as Andrew's 3rd argument. So the same way that's invalid is the same way AP's argument's invalid. So those 2 reach a push in that way. If you hold AP's argument as fine, you hold argument 3 as fine, and that gets you to a neutral claim. There is no Christians should support Zionism. AP's reason to protect Christians was directly countered by Andrew's argument 2, that there are 3rd options. We can send Christian missionaries, things like this. We can do hyper-accelerationism and just nuke the entire place to keep Christians safe and stop like Islamic caliphates and stuff like that. And
Sorry,
then sorry, what?
Go ahead. I was going to say something that I shouldn't be saying online, so I'm not going to say it.
And then, it just gets into, like, argument 3 is an entire non sequitur, but does get countered by the example in argument 1 of, yes, I should love my daughter who's still doing OnlyFans, but I shouldn't support her doing OnlyFans. I should love the Jews, but I shouldn't support Zionism if they're, like, doing something. And, like, I have no obligation to support Zionism. Even if I love my daughter and she's doing something completely morally neutral, like she's just a lawyer, right? I don't think we'd say, like, or not even a lawyer. What's a fucking neutral job? She's a cashier.
veterinarian.
She's a cashier at Walmart.
All right.
There's not, like, a moral claim there, right? Maybe there's pragmatic engineer. You said engineer, right?
Oh, I said veterinarian. But I realized that you're a vegan, so you have strong views on that.
I'm just going with, like, architect. Is architect neutral? Like, morally neutral? I don't think architects have, like, a morally good or bad thing.
Well, now I'm trying to think of the most morally neutral thing possible in terms of occupation.
You're a door-to-door salesman.
That's pretty morally neutral.
My daughter's a door-to-door salesman. I should love her. Like, I have the parental obligation to love her. But despite me having an obligation to love her and treat her as something beyond every other person, that doesn't mean I should be supporting her job. I shouldn't be like, yes, honey, you should go do that job. So that's the non sequitur, and that gets countered in argument 1. in this way, it just reaches like a push, and AP having the affirmative here just ends up losing. He doesn't show the affirmative over the negative. Though that does get into like very debate nerd shit, and I do see why it's like it is fairly split.
I don't know what the term push is. In this kind.
Have you ever played poker?
Yes.
Have you ever like had the same hand as someone else?
That's a push?
Yeah, you like split the pot, go out, push. Now in terms
I've never
of
done
like,
that. Well,
in terms of
well,
like
I always played Texas Hold'em. Like,
yeah, you can
oh, whatever.
you get that, but like in terms of a debate, typically it's seen as pushes favor the negative. Like, because
Okay,
the
yeah,
affirmative
because-
has the burden to prove their claim. So if they're like equally valid, the negative kind of wins.
Okay. Because the negative can take because a negative isn't. So a negative isn't anti-them. It's anti-them or neutral.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's some forms of a negative which then makes an alternative positive claim, right? So if Andrew went in here saying solely Christians should not support Zionism, which he didn't do. His argument one was directly saying Christians just don't have an obligation to do it. So he gave arguments on both sides. So he did take both, either a neutral or a negative to it, or an alternative. So when he gets it to, okay, so my negative claims beat some of your positive claims, and my neutral claims beat some of your positive claims to the point where no, the rest are clearly on ahead. It just comes down to we haven't shown that Christians in particular should support Zionism. It's like technically Andrew just does win through like a debate term.
I mean, I just think that overall the arguments that Andrew presented were more convincing, but
yeah,
and like on an objective basis, he presented like one valid argument.
I'm trying to be charitable as much as I can to AP because I just don't think he made a valid argument. I don't think anything he said was either substantiated or led to Christians should be doing this, especially given the prompt is should Christians in particular. Like the history of like Muslim caliphate, they're being violent and shit doesn't get you to Christians in particular should support Zionism. So if I want to be like really pedantic, I'd push that, but I think it's like fine.
That's fair. Well, now that this is on the internet, David Wood is going to react to it, and we're going to become famous. How does that make you feel?
But I haven't been famous this morning. There are just so many inside jokes that we've done here that no one will ever get if this ever gets seen by someone.
Nah, some people will see it. You have a small audience on your channel.
Hopefully. Okay, I'm going to end the stream, I think.
Bye. Don't follow me on Twitter. Don't look me up. I'm nobody. Shout out to Beyond Creation, 200 Stab Wounds, Aborted, Aether Realm, Flesh God Apocalypse, Super Heavy Goat Ass, Blind Guardian, just in the stream, Eternal Storm, Catalyst,